I'm psychologist Dr. Bryan Violet. Today I'll be sitting down with the Pivonka brothers, 4 young, sturdy Catholic men trying to make their way in a secular world. We'll be talking about sibling dynamics between them and how they see one another as unique. We'll also be talking about 4 different approaches to life after high school and answering the question, should I go to college? And finally, we'll be talking about where each of them is in their respective faith journeys. This is the Catholic Center Show. All right, I was trying to think of the best way to start off our conversation, and I came up with this idea. So there is a Pivonka-ness about all of you that you probably don't recognize because you're in the system, you're in the family. But from the outside looking in, there is a collective Pivonka-ness, okay? But since you're in the system, I'm sure each one of you sees each other as very unique and different. And you know my interest in psychology. So I thought the first thing we would do is have 3 of you describe what is unique about the 4th brother. And we'll go round robin and we'll take turns. And then after everyone does it, you get to defend yourself. I mean, maybe you won't attack each other, but you get to say how you see yourself as different than your brothers. And we're going to start with youngest first because we love picking on the youngest.
Yes. Great.
And so
idea.
we're going to have Eddie, David, and Alex say what is unique and different about Colby from the rest of the brothers. And then Colby, you'll be able to comment on yourself and how you see yourself as different. And then we'll go around, we'll go by age, finishing up with Big David.
Yeah.
All right? So
Deal.
Sounds good.
here's your chance to really lay into each other. What makes Colby unique among the brothers?
He's a little slower than the rest. I think would be one thing that comes to mind pretty quick.
So not intelligent.
Yeah, I mean, just to get the ball rolling, I think we might as well get that one out of the way.
Get the ball rolling with unintelligent.
Not intelligent. Okay, what else makes him unique?
I think he's substantially more goofy and joyful, generally speaking, than probably all of us.
Goofy and joyful.
Yeah, a little more extroverted.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah, that's fair. You probably are the most extroverted of the 4 of us, which is saying something because we're all pretty social. But
That's interesting because I remember when I first met you guys, I mean, it was just wild. I mean, when I came to visit my wife and meet her family for the first time, I was looking for where the trouble was. I don't know what that says about me as a 30-year-old finding trouble with a bunch of 12-year-old kids. But I found like there was a huge social element to your personalities. You guys were wild, having a good time all the way from way back. So to hear that Colby is the most social, the most wild, the most goofy, the most extroverted is interesting. Who is the least social? Who's the most introverted?
I feel like it's got to be Eddie.
Yeah, I feel like.
But like
I
not
wouldn't want
at
to
the
speak
same
for
time.
myself, but
Yeah, but I think it's just because we're all so, like, outspoken
Yeah.
that you even being a little less would make it. But it's weird, too, because we all did sales. And, like, we've all
And we're
done
all
stuff where you have to
equally-
be super social.
Yeah. So Eddie hates people. Got it.
Yeah.
We'll put a pin in that.
Mm.
All right. What else? What else about Colby? Let's go through systematically here.
he likes cars a lot more than the rest of us. Big car guy.
Big car guy.
Ours and both.
Mechanical?
Not as into football as the rest as well.
Also not
Bit
mechanical.
unique.
He doesn't
Not
like it
mechanical.
because of the stuff.
Not mechanical.
Just likes cars, but doesn't understand them.
Psychological.
Okay.
Understands it more than I do. Really.
Cool to look, hard to touch.
There's
you know?
levels.
And you just got a new car?
Specs guy.
I did. Yeah, I did. Very hype.
What'd you get?
Got a Mustang. A new one, or newer. I had a 2012 and upgraded to a 2017.
I could not think of a car that fits better with your personality than a Mustang.
Thank you. I've heard
Just
that a lot
obnoxious.
now. I've gotten quite
Yeah,
used to
works.
that.
Do people just call you American Muscle as a nickname?
I mean, it really depends on where you're going. Most places, yeah, they scream out, "Hey, Mus," or "Hey, man," but depends on the setting for sure.
Okay. Anything else about Mr. Colby which makes him more unique? So that's another thing, though. The hobbies, different sorts of hobbies. So football for Eddie, David, Alex, but Colby's not a big football guy. But you're all sports guys.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
more played
Yeah.
basketball
Not a
and baseball.
huge sports guy.
Right.
Mhm.
Colby's
At least not as much of a
definitely
watching
much
sports
less
guy,
of
I
a
feel
sports.
like.
Yeah, like after his
Yeah, I
involvement,
don't enjoy
I
watching
wouldn't say you're
football
much of a
as anywhere
sports
close as
guy.
much.
Yeah.
Mhm. Cool. All right, Colby, here's your chance to defend yourself. What do you think makes you different than your brothers? How do you see yourself as different from them? What's the age gap, by the way?
The
You're
age gap is
considerably-
no, so
Right.
it's David's the oldest. He's 5 years older than me. Then Eddie's 4 years older than me. Then Alex is 2 years older than me. So
Okay.
it's David 24, Eddie 23, Alex 21, me 19.
Okay, so it's a tight pack right now.
Yeah, so we're all pretty close, but I mean, I don't know. I
Stay
think
that way.
we're all definitely similar. Like, I take after Alex in a lot of ways. I also take after David in a lot of ways.
Tell us the ways.
Well, I think like my clothing is definitely primarily Alex. I mean, I think everyone in our family's clothing is primarily Alex. It's definitely not David. But
Or dog.
Yeah.
I've got
like
to think.
David, I think I take after more in like my mental like ambition and how I go about problems. I'd say we're more similar in that regard. But
Mhm.
I think I am different. Just I think I'm a little weirder. I don't know. I make a lot more noise
quirky.
in general. And we definitely have different interests. I mean, they all played football. I played football for maybe a month or two.
What's
but I
what's
always-
the weirdest thing about you, Colby?
I mean, I'm not going to say that. I think there are a lot of different things that are weird.
Does anyone want to say the weirdest thing about him?
I
Want
don't
to talk
I
about your
can't
new
pinpoint.
pets?
Oh, I
Sure.
have piranhas, but I don't think that's weird. I think
That's
that's
pretty
cool.
weird. It's
Okay.
both weird and cool.
Okay, depends on who we're talking to, but I think they're pretty cool.
It's atypical.
Yeah, I don't know what would make myself necessarily different. I think I enjoy being alone a lot more. Like
Everyone
I'm
said you're the most
social.
extroverted.
That is true, but I'm a lot more comfortable when I'm like alone, so that kind of counteracts everything everyone has said. Like I'm fine in social settings, but at first I think I'm the most painfully uncomfortable out of all four of us. It's just once I'm open, I'm a lot more
That's
open.
probably true.
Like,
Always
once you're
horrible
comfortable?
at meeting people.
Like if I'm comfortable around you, I get comfortable very quickly. As me and
Yeah.
David had some disagreements due to that, but in general, at like the first time I meet someone, it is painfully uncomfortable for both parties. But
Yeah.
For
you
both
know,
parties.
I think I get over that quickly.
Cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Now we'll shift to the family fashion designer. We'll talk about Alex next. Second youngest. And Colby, since you're on a roll, what makes Alex unique and different from the rest of the brothers?
You say weak and different?
Unique.
Yeah.
Oh, unique.
Either way.
I mean, I think obviously we're all blonde. He has brown hair, so that's right from the get go.
Right.
He's
We
a lot
found him.
more individual, I guess. Like he has his passion. I mean, everyone's individual, but he has his passions, and he doesn't really care if anybody else thinks. He doesn't care what anyone thinks about his passions. They're his passions, and they always have been. So it's kind of just he loves what he loves, and
Confident in his convictions.
yeah, he's just very firm on what he likes and doesn't really care if anybody else doesn't like it. So that's cool.
Can you give us an example of that? What's something that he likes? He doesn't care what other people think about it.
I mean, I think like art. I mean, in general, he's always been super into art. Some people like to, you know, throw jabs at artists, but he's always been, yeah, I'm good at drawing. I can, you know, he's good at what he does, and he's just been confident in whatever he's doing his whole life. So I think that's something that's a little different. He's a lot more sure of things.
Mm-hmm. Do people throw jabs at artists? Is that a thing?
I mean, we do. We like to. Just...
I think it's kind of a certain type of artist that, you know, you try to not be, because it's like really easy to make fun of like the person who makes art, their whole personality. So that I don't think has ever really been me. You can get a little bit fruity with it pretty quick, get a little bit more granola than I guess I'd probably want to be. But I was never really that artist to my friends. Yeah. I was doing other stuff.
You want to have like 1 foot in the mainstream as well?
I think so. I mean, if you don't want to be made fun of, like maybe a little bit more awareness.
Maybe he does care about being made fun of.
I think your brothers will find a way regardless, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm just saying you can make it worse for yourself.
All right, Eddie, what's unique about your brother Alex?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you, or actually to get to something different, I think one unique thing, at least more now in our adult life, is he's not as physically active, which isn't obviously a bad thing, but I feel like at least with me, David, and Colby, we're all pretty into like going to the gym and weightlifting, and Alex likes biking, and he finds his own ways to get it done, but yeah, it's a bit more unorthodox. Because we were all super active when we were younger, but yeah, he's kind of found his own way of doing things.
It's weird too because he was by far the most athletic of us when we were in high school. Like if you were to take us all at the same year in high school, he would have been by far the most athletic and like naturally good. And now that we're all adults, he like does the least out of all of us.
Alex, you feel like you've just
not trying to dog him, just saying.
Do you feel like you've conquered the entirety of the athletic realm, so it's just beneath you now?
No. I would say more than anything, I've just kind of, I just don't really enjoy like training to train, like lifting to lift, like at all. I don't enjoy that. The things that I would like to do to be more active, just haven't done a whole lot of them, mainly because like rock climbing, activities like that, that's stuff I love. Super expensive memberships, so it's just not something I've done like a lot of. But yeah, honestly, I just hate like working out like gym style. Fuck you. You're right.
There it is. I was wondering how long we would go. No,
I like more like game based, competitive based working out if I can.
Gotcha.
Video games.
Would you do well, I'm happy to talk about video games too, but would you do you see yourself becoming one of those like triathletes as you get older to find a reason to get in shape, find something to train for? Your brothers are laughing at that question.
Like yeah, I mean,
furthest thing he would ever do.
That's like the most training to train bullshit you could do. Like, probably not, though.
Okay. All right, David, what makes Alex unique?
I think he's definitely the most contrarian of us. Like, especially Colby and I think we're definitely people pleasers. And I think Eddie's less than Colby and I, but he also is very good at like towing the line and like handling situations uniquely. Alex will just do what he wants to do in a situation. And like, obviously, he's not just a dick to be mean. Like, you won't come into a situation and just be a brat. But when you have something you want or an opinion that's not like going to make it easy for everyone, you're going to actually like say something about it.
The man of conviction.
Woo!
Yeah, he just treats people poorly.
Yeah,
He kind of only thinks about himself and just kind of.
There's
we're
a
all
start.
just
There's
like
a
stepping stones to kind of wherever that next thing is.
there's a healthy stubbornness.
It's horrible.
A healthy stubbornness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Alex. Here's your chance to defend yourself. How do you see yourself as different than your brothers? Just as a reminder.
Yeah,
Just as a reminder,
Yeah.
they said you are granola, not athletic, and you're not nice to people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Maybe this is not true, but I feel like for the most part, I've always felt like the three of them have like a wider range of like maybe what they want for their lives, or like kind of where they could go or where they could end up and be like satisfied and happy. I feel like that for me is very specific, and I struggle with that. But also, I think it has brought me in like a different career direction, just because I'm not really open to do many things. I don't know. I have the things I want to do with my life, I feel like, and I want to do them. So maybe I'm a little bit more stubborn there.
What does that consist of? What is the? I like the way you phrased that. There's a narrow path for you, where you know if you travel down that path, that will allow you to experience satisfaction and completion and meaning. What is that path for you?
I mean, I wanna work for myself ultimately, for sure. I want to work within art for the rest of my life, which is not an easy place to work for really any period of time. But yeah, I'd like to be just kind of working as an artist with my businesses, and that's.
Why do you think doing something else would make you unhappy?
And I can take that. I guess I've done a decent amount of stuff that's made me pretty unhappy, and I've done a couple things that make me pretty happy. So I would like to
just
stick
experience
with them if I can. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Now we are shifting to Eddie.
Nice.
We'll start. Alex, you might as well go ahead. Since you went last, you have the floor. What makes Eddie unique among the brothers?
Eddie has like an ability to remove his emotion from things, and like being like compulsive, he can like remove that. I don't know what it is, but he has like a moderation and a control to himself that I cannot even begin to like fathom.
Could you give us an example?
That would be my thing.
Nice.
He can like.
We're off to a hot start.
He can play with dangerous things, and it's okay for him because he has really good self-control, and I don't have that.
Like
same,
matches,
liberty. Anything. Drinking.
Matchbox is a perfect example.
Let's say vices. I don't know. He has really good self-control. I feel like Eddie never takes it too far. Doesn't do a whole lot of shit he regrets. I feel like he's a pretty grounded guy. I'm not gonna say nothing he regrets, but he's very he's very able to just make a situation like logical and remove that emotion, and I think it serves him pretty well.
Eddie, how annoyed will you be if I make a Steady Eddie joke? I'm sure that's
Honestly,
been made before.
not at all. I mean, it's definitely been a nickname that's come up before, but
I'm sure.
it's not. I don't know. It definitely doesn't bother me, and kind of like Alex is saying, like I think it's always been fairly fitting. It's like I'm pretty steady, pretty mellow, not too emotionally affected by things like Alex was saying, and
Yeah.
Until he is.
so go for it, Brian.
Until
Well, I think
Let's hear your big joke.
No, that was the joke. Say calling you Steady
Oh,
Eddie,
dang
and
it.
yeah, it's not that. I'm not as funny as you are. Maybe you should be hosting this. Get me out of here.
Give me a better
No,
mic.
I was thinking that you would react to like what a cliche that is, that people probably call you Steady Eddie all the time, but I do think it is a compliment. I don't remember who just said it right now, but someone said that you're steady until you're not. What is one thing that just grinds your gears where you lose that steadiness and you just...
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I have a couple like pet peeves. And I feel like one thing is if I'm really tired, like I feel like if I have energy, it's pretty hard to affect me. If I'm really tired, like I feel like I'm more prone to like just like being less patient and I guess more
Or
emotional.
cold.
But or cold is definitely a big thing. I am very sensitive to the cold. If I get cold, I get very upset.
It's bad.
Me and David went on this. It was like a hiking trip with some guys who were both kind of mutual friends of ours. Um, and David described it as a hike. And I was like, well, I'm not, I'm not that good at hiking. I don't do much cardio. Like, how hard are we talking? Because David does a lot of that kind of thing. And he's like, oh, it's just like a pretty easy hike, like a couple water crossings. And come to find out, it was basically a water hike. It was basically like the worst lazy river you've ever been a part of. You have to bring like these big inflatable tubes, and basically the whole time you're floating down, and you're in the shade, and the water's freezing. And by the time we were leaving, like there's literally a point where, and again, it was all kosher by the end of everything, but I was literally like yelling at him. I was just pissed that he like even brought me there in the first place. But yeah, once I warmed up, it was we got back in good graces. But yeah, I hate being cold. Yeah, I think that. Yeah.
Expectations? You like to have your expectations be accurate to the experience?
Yeah, I definitely do. Yeah, especially with Doc.
Leave it to your older brother to minimize how difficult something is to make you go.
Yeah, it's on me.
No, and to be fair, it's
I
like
didn't know.
the hike itself definitely wasn't exhausting, but I think he just didn't quite recall how much I hate being cold. Like even going into grocery stores, like if I'm cold, I don't know. I usually am cold in grocery stores. I hate grocery stores. I hate people taking my things from my drawers while you guys are getting me going here. Got a couple
Sorry
more.
about that.
I feel like I really hate losing things and not knowing where something is, and obviously if that's because someone moved it from where I had it, like I hate losing things, and I lose things easy, so it's a tough life I live.
It's a tough life.
Yeah.
Well, after this is over and we stop recording, we'll have the airing of grievances. You guys can talk about all the ways you have annoyed each other over the years. Okay, so we haven't done. Okay, so who have we done for Eddie? We've done just Alex, right?
Alex.
Okay, Colby, what makes your brother Eddie unique?
I think the level of trust that he has in life in general is just way more than I have. I don't know about Alex or David, but he's always seemed to have this like attitude, like it's gonna be fine. Kind of like that, I guess they were saying, where he's just confident and even keeled in any situation, where he doesn't take a bunch of precautionary steps for much. but is always very, very, very confident that it's going to be fine anyways. And somehow it kind of always is. Like with his job, for example, like he has a very, very good job that's pretty tough to get and takes a lot of skill to be able to be good at. And he really has no finance background at all, but he's making it work. And he's hitting these quarterly goals, and it's just kind of like, how is he doing that? Nobody knows, but it's Eddie, and he's doing it. So just let him go, I guess.
To my employer. I am fully qualified. I am really,
This is going to be on social media.
He actually has multiple degrees.
Get me on the
if you've never read them.
Yeah, well, it sounds like Eddie doesn't really experience as much anxiety. I mean, we all experience distress, but people like take one of two approaches to anxiety. One is control, and the other is trust. Sounds like Eddie's big in the trust department. Everything is going to be cool. It's fine. I don't need to plan. I don't need to prepare. I don't need to be in control. I'm just going to let things happen and trust everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Let me clarify.
Trust.
Let me clarify. He's not just like a balloon floating down life.
Yeah.
He's not a balloon floating down life. He has like a certain, like a minimal level of control. Like, he's not just letting things get thrown at him. He's at least, like, kind of controlling things. But I just wanted to clarify that. There is some control.
So just enough.
Just the perfect amount.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm trying to think of something that I can use to make fun of him for with this, but it sounds like it's just a compliment.
Figure it out, man.
Funny.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
find out a way to get made fun of.
I generally, I do deal with anxiety generally. Like, it's not something that I don't deal with at all. But yeah, I think it's always come very natural to, like they said, just kind of trust in God, trust in His plan, and that everything's gonna work out the way it's supposed to. And I think one big thing, I think we've all kind of learned it through sales a little bit, is one thing that is said a lot is just to, like, control what you can control. So, if I'm doing my best and I can really truthfully say that, then, you've got to kind of just trust that what's out of your control will kind of work out however it should. So
right, because you're dealing with people and they have their own free will.
Right, exactly.
Now, I imagine that in terms of temperament, you're a bit like your dad, right? Your dad's kind of that way.
Yeah, and I mean, even growing up, I think I got a lot of comparisons to my dad, and I think we are very similar. And I mean, even looking at my mom, I mean, there's definitely things. Because I don't think, even with all of us doing sales, I think any kind of ability to do that and a lot of our social skills, at least on more of a sales setting, really is more from kind of our mom's side, because she's always the person who can really, talk to whoever, strike up a conversation just with some random stranger. But yeah, as far as just kind of temperament and personality, I think a lot of that is from my dad. For sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. None of us are carbon copies of either parent. We're always a blend and mix of both, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Cool.
And yeah, our parents are definitely very different. So I think it's pretty easy to see, like, which parts we got from. Not in a bad way. It's a wonderfully complimentary way. People. Your parents are great, but they are quite different people. Yeah, for sure. Very much so.
All right, David, locked and loaded.
I'd say the two, because one of them is going to sound more mean, and it's not. But I think
there we go.
Now
this is going to make good content.
Yeah. Well, I think one, he's like definitely the most stubborn of us. Like,
more than Alex? I thought Alex was the stubborn one.
It's not the same. Like, Alex has his things that it's just not. Alex has things that he likes, and he's very outspoken, and he doesn't care what people think about his opinions and, like, what he does. But Eddie will just do something to prove people wrong, or, like, because people are telling him to do something else.
So it's like an angry stubbornness.
Kinda. I don't know if I'm sure it's evolved in some different ways now, but like when he first started doing door to door, like to back up, we've all done door to door sales, and I was the first one to do it, and it's how I paid for college. But I did it and stopped, and I had a good experience. I made good money, and out of nowhere, we found out Eddie was going to do it with a whole different group in like Compton, California. And he didn't say anything to me. He just like left, and we were all like, dude, I did this. Like I can help you. I had a good experience. Like, why are you going with this group? And he just already decided. And he's like, I'm doing it. And we all told him like, dude, are you sure? Because like we all said, he's probably the most quiet of us.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't even know if this is your personality type to like be good at sales and doing something like that. And he went out and like, I think he'd agree, like he got his butt kicked for a while, but he just refused to leave and made it through and did well and like proved us all wrong. But it was way more in a like, we all told him to do something else. And he's like, no. And if you give him an idea and it's not like something that he would do, or like you're pushing him away from something that he already wants to do, he just digs his heels in.
Doubles
like
down.
Crazy. Yeah. So I'd say that, and then really probably the most private of us. Like I'm a pretty open book. Yeah, I think we're all fairly open, borderline to a fault. I think I sometimes forget what isn't public information sometimes.
You and Colby are more like that.
Definitely.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But Eddie, like, even with his own life, there are things that he does where, like, you have to either, like, really pry and ask about it, or he'll just never tell you. Or he'll do things that are really cool or, like, good, and no one knows about it. Like, he visited, for, like, the past couple years, has visited our grandparents, like, weekly, who are in, like, memory care, and our grandpa who was in, not hospice, but he was in kind of like a retirement community.
Yeah.
And he'd visit him all the time. And, like, I had no idea. And if it were me, it'd be like, how are you doing? It's like, yeah, I just came to see, or like came from seeing grandma or whatever.
Yeah.
And you just like, I had no idea. And I think people were aware of it because, like, obviously you're with mom and dad and everyone, but you keep your things to yourself by far the most of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's admirable, right? He's not looking for the credit. He's just doing this thing because he believes it's the right thing. Eddie, what are you hiding?
That's me, baby. a lot of different things. No, I mean, I definitely am a private person, and I feel like there's a lot of things where I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things I don't share unless I feel like they're a big deal. And I think it kind of takes a lot for me to think something's worth like sharing necessarily. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty secretive, and I don't know. I mean, we talk. I mean, just amongst my brothers and my friends, like, I mean, people know, as far as what there is to know, they know most of what's going on in my life. But
they're on a need to know
basis.
basis.
It's just you I don't really tell things to for the most part. Not everyone's
actually, you guys don't know this, but Eddie and I have weekly conversations for like an hour every week, and he clues me into all the details of his life.
A little debrief.
We just whisper. We turn the volume all the way up so we can hear, but we whisper to each other.
Eddie, what's wrong with Colby?
Well, I ask more.
It's a lot of fun. Bad. It is.
Cool. All right. And then one last musketeer. You guys think there are 3 musketeers, but there aren't. There are 4.
What happened to the Fourth Musketeer?
The Four Horsemen? Want to go with that? Four-leaf clover?
Yeah.
David's up. Eddie, since you had... Oh, actually, let defend yourself. What do you see it about yourself that is unique from your other brothers? Anything else that we haven't mentioned?
Really not a whole lot. I think they did a lot, I don't know, a good job kind of covering what there is to talk about. I feel like really the main thing that I would think of is kind of what we were talking about first, where just more moderate and even tempered. And I don't know, I'm a very logical person, and I think that's part of why I can be so stubborn in certain things, where it's like if I've kind of thought over a situation and decided that, something's worth doing, or, I should do something a certain way, then, once I come to that decision, I am very firm in it oftentimes. And obviously, being that I'm human and I, make mistakes in that reasoning, like there's definitely things where it can be tough to be realistic and admit that, maybe I'd made a mistake in how I thought about something. But luckily, I don't think that happens too often. I'm right like 999 times out of 1,000. Bad mistakes, or even not the perfect decision, is pretty rare to come by when you
It's
kind
got to
of
be
look
lonely,
through.
huh?
Yeah,
It's tough.
well,
It's like everyone's kind of
yeah,
below you.
right. And it's like kind of like you see like old Egyptians depicted where they have like kind of the queen on the shoulder, and they're all kind
Yeah.
of holding me,
Yeah.
kind of parading me through the city just so people can kind of catch a glimpse of my face even once a year, kind of thing.
You guys, do you feel like it's hard, like David, Colby, Alex, do you feel like it's hard for you to live up to the standard that Eddie has set for you?
It's a daily
100%.
burden.
Yeah, it's hard. I often think about changing my last name just so I don't have to deal with the responsibility.
Right.
People
Just
get
always living in his
depressed
shadow.
from
Right.
Yeah. That's tough.
It's like walking behind a redwood tree,
Yeah. I'm a big guy.
So stupid.
You probably can't tell by the camera, but I'm by far the biggest of the four.
No, I can't tell by the camera.
Not for the lounge.
All right. Fire at your brother David. What makes him unique?
I can start. I mean, I feel like the most obvious thing, so I'm gonna just kind of steal the low-hanging fruit right from the jump here, is he's definitely by far the smartest. Like growing up, schools seemed very easy,
Well,
straight
compared to
A's.
Colby, we've already established.
Right. It's kind of like stair steps, but you kind of get the first one, second one, it's a pretty even drop, and then the stairs get real big as you get towards kind of the bottom
Big
floor.
stairs.
No, but he's always been very smart, and as far as and disciplined, he's even, with me and Colby also being, pretty consistently active and whatnot. I mean, David's definitely been at least the most in his adult life he does CrossFit and trail running and mountain biking and so and I think that's good, because I think obviously with three younger brothers, it's good to have someone who's doing things the right way. And again, not to say that the rest of us are doing necessarily things the wrong way, but yeah, it's a good kind of, he sets a good example, and I think he puts a lot of things that are good for us to kind of try and match him. And yeah.
David, do you feel pressure to do things the right way and the good way that your younger brothers look up to?
Not really. I think there have been times where I've been more aware of it, or more aware of my example and like failures in my example. But I think without them, I would still do a lot of the things that I do. But it puts it in a bigger context. Like, I want to be good for them and for my family. And I think it's been really cool, because a lot of families, I don't think there's the same vulnerability or like openness with each other.
Yeah.
To know how like siblings feel about each other. And it's been really cool, I think, with all of us. Obviously, right now is interesting because we get to all talk about each other's uniqueness and the things we see uniquely in them. But it's been really cool that all of my brothers have honored me in some way for the way I live, which was like is really rare. Like
before today.
Yeah, before today. Like
yeah.
I could pinpoint specific times with all of them.
Shit.
No, not today. That's what I mean though. Like that's not a given the headassery of this group, you wouldn't expect that to be part of the dynamic. And I think it's really cool that they've said stuff like that the way I live is something that they like notice and appreciate, which is really humbling because it's not often a thought of like, I'm big brother, so I have to.
Right.
It's just kind of how I do.
Well, that's a fantastic answer. It's very Captain America of you. I love it.
Oh yeah. Big Chris Evans guy.
All right. Who wants to go next? Alex, since you said that you haven't said anything complimentary about David, and it sounds like you're locked.
No, I totally have.
And chop him off at the knees. Why don't you tell us what's unique about your brother David?
I do agree with what Ed said. But also I feel like a lot of the like, I don't know. I feel like people always have like said kind of what Ed said, that he's the smartest and all this stuff, and not that it bothers me, but I've just never felt any like intelligence gap between us, really, like any of us. Like I feel like every one of us, like I don't really feel like David's like smarter or dumber than Eddie. Like in my eyes, I don't look at David and think like he's the intelligent one. I think if anything, like I would go more in like the moral direction. Like his morals are like strong and they're set in stone. They always have been. Yeah, his integrity. Yeah, has always just been very strong. And he's always just like been very serious about that. I feel like from when he was really young. And then I feel like the thing that does stand out about his intelligence isn't necessarily like that I think he's the smartest person in the world. It's more so that like the way he uses his intelligence to like lead people and bring people together is really impressive for sure. Like I think he's like very well balanced, like with his like intelligence. Like he's like a good leader, but he can also be led. Like he's just kind of good at like across the board. I feel like at all of working with like other people. Yeah. I think his like intelligence as far as like being a leader is like what usually stands out to me if I was going to get into it.
For sure. Like earlier when you guys were all talking over each other and he's like, guys, stop. You're talking over each other.
Yeah.
That never happened.
Sure. Doesn't take.
I mean, this is.
No, I'm just kidding.
It's just where he applies his intelligence. He's not smarter than me. It's just what he uses it for.
Just choose it at better times.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's.
I mean, this is more
really intelligent. I think he's like the most intelligent in ways that like I'm not. So it's like really impressive to me, like where he's strong, I'm very weak. For sure. I think we are like opposites in most ways.
Yeah. I mean, there's
so I just
definitely
think, like,
different types of intelligence.
Where I notice it. Yes. Yeah. And I think he's really strong in a couple of them.
You're cutting out, man.
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit there, but
yeah, I don't know
I'm sure everything you said was really special and important, and the world will want to hear it.
I was done.
It was low. Don't worry. Whatever you said was uploaded. It's just that none of us heard it. The world will be hearing it as at the same time we'll be hearing it later as I go through the editing. But I'm sure it was. I'm sure it's profound. Very profound.
I look forward to that.
I'm sure you.
I don't know if there's going to be words in that moment
manner
that you missed.
All right.
Go ahead and
great.
get the last opinion on
Great.
David.
Yeah, the last of opinions, Colby.
The last of opinions.
The youngest, talking about. Obviously, we're kidding and joking around about Colby not being intelligent, but you do have the opportunity now. You know, the last, the position of honor is always last. And why don't you tell us about what's unique about your oldest brother?
Okay, now there's more of a spotlight than previously, but I think I'm going to agree with everything that Alex and Eddie said. We're going to start with that.
Nice.
But I think in general,
Eddie's never wrong, so of course you're going to agree with him.
Well, yeah, of course.
Right.
I mean, Eddie can't be wrong. Alex also can't be wrong. And they're actually always right about the same things, even if they're different opinions. But anyways, yeah. So I don't know. I think his decisions between like 16 to present date, so whatever, 16 to 24, have all been very what our family would consider good decisions. So very good grades in school, pretty smart in high school, wasn't too dumb, didn't get in a lot of trouble from my memory. And then graduated, got a lot of scholarships, was in those weird little academic groups that save you money in college. What is that called? NHS, David?
I wasn't in that, but
he wasn't in the tough ones. Anyways, no, but yeah, I mean, he just had good grades, was pretty smart, went to college for engineering, whatever type of it was, I'm not sure. Graduated, did door-to-door sales. So he's done a lot of things that take effort and are very respected across the board, which for me personally left kind of a good blueprint. It's like, all right, David did it right. Which pieces can I take and still make it out okay while enjoying my life? So I'm doing school and I did door-to-door.
Wait, so do you assume then that David has not enjoyed his life?
No, David enjoyed his life because he enjoys things like that. I don't. Like, I like having a little individualism with things. So it's like, all right, he went to college. I'll do that. It worked out well. He did door-to-door sales. Okay, he did that. It worked out well. I'll do those two things. Now, every other part of my life, I'm going to switch up because those two constants worked out. So that's kind of how it's been with David. Oh, no. David's spiritual life is very good. I also have learned a lot from that. But just in general, he like left me a blueprint to like what I could do that would work. That left me with my individual analysis to see what I can do different and maybe still make it work. If that makes sense.
Got you. The blueprint. So that's your nickname. We got American Muscle and we got the
Dog
blueprint.
The blueprint. Yep.
By the end of this, each one of you, Steady Eddie, we need one for Alex. We don't have one for Alex yet, but everyone will have a call name. We'll find one for Alex. Trust me, as the conversation goes on. The blueprint.
Albo.
The blueprint.
Albo.
The BP.
All right, David.
Eggy and Albo.
You get to defend yourself. How do you see yourself
Those
as
were all
unique from your
compliments.
brothers? They were. I feel like somebody should insult him or something.
Yeah, nobody likes his drive. It's kind of weird how much he likes engineering. You know,
I don't like engineering.
I'll throw in a negative.
Spends a life doing
I'll
things he
throw
doesn't
in a
even
negative
love.
real quick.
I was gonna say I'll
Can I
beat
throw in a
myself.
negative?
To balance it. Lest
just
we
to
canonize
balance it.
David. Go ahead.
I would say he probably has the most intense temper of us. Like when he gets angry, I'm pretty scared of him. Not because he's gonna hurt me, but he's an intense guy when he's angry. I'm not like scared of being hurt most of the time, unless it's my fault. But he could get pretty intense when he gets angry, and I don't see that from like Colby or Eddie very often. Not that I see it from him often either.
Well,
but...
Eddie talked about how he gets furious when people steal his socks. David, what's the one thing that just infuriates you? When is the beast unleashed?
Well, I think it's specifically in the context of our family, because these are like, I can be more frustrated or more like expressive with how I feel because it's our family and it feels more appropriate. But I think in our family, things that I take seriously that a lot of my brothers do not is like timeliness is a big one. So like when we're late for something and it's like Alex just started getting ready and we are supposed to leave in 4 minutes, and then he's
That's a hot
bitching
take to
about
put across
not being
the
able
board.
to find something. It's like, dude, this is your fault and we're all screwed now. And like something like that, I get really frustrated because it's something I take seriously. It's like, you guys aren't even trying. And this is like, it's not hard. And then I think another one would just be like, there are certain, like, reverence, I think, has more of a like specifically religious connotation, but I take certain situations seriously, or I don't know, like going to
like mistimed jokes you don't like.
yeah, like the time and place for things. I think I'm more aware of
about that
sometimes, and when like
He's like a mom.
yeah. I definitely like unironically take the
He's
most
strict.
after my
He's
mom.
like mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there are a lot of good things about mom, but those are
Of course
things that like mom
Love
is
your mom.
the one that has like self-control and like knows the environment.
I mean the word strict has a certain connotation to it. I mean reverent is a compliment, right? It depends on your angle of how you're perceiving it. It's just like, you know, there's a different connotation with saying someone is skinny versus someone is slender.
Yeah.
Right. The second one's kind of a compliment, right? Someone is strict, someone is reverent. I mean, it depends on your angle into it. So,
I meant more that
He
he's
don't calls
like
anyone slender anymore, Ryan.
Go ahead,
Alex. Man.
I meant that he was more like strict about, like he's a lot more strict about when you can have fun. You know, like I think I'm a bit more. The three of us are a bit more loose when like, okay, we could have fun doing this. Where David might be like, you know, this isn't supposed to be fun, and it's like, well, I want to make it fun. So I think he's more like strict on that, like what is supposed to be fun, what's supposed to just be like what it is, and sometimes that's just kind of ass.
Serious.
David's okay with doing stuff that are just kind of more serious and a little more boring.
He's okay not having fun, whereas the rest of us are a little.
No, you know what I mean, though.
If fun is able to be had.
So well, what I hear you saying, Alex, and I think what Colby's agreeing with is that there's this a juxtaposition of having fun or it's boring. Like seriousness, if it's seriousness is boring for you.
Well, his lines like moved over a little bit from the three of us. I think what he considers really serious maybe wouldn't quite cross my like threshold of like serious. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, can you give an example?
I'm trying to think of what would like be an example.
Literally, this is a perfect example.
How is this?
Oh yeah, maybe
because this is not supposed to be serious.
But it's not. But it's like
naturally,
David's
gonna approach it more seriously. He's gonna be
because
more prepared. He's going to take this a whole lot more seriously than maybe I would. Like I'm sure he probably made sure he had all his stuff together. Like,
well, let me ask you a question. Which
I was hoping my laptop turned on.
Yeah, which do you think I prefer?
Well, what was the word you said? A juxtaposition. There's a juxtaposition. Is that what you said? That's where the value lies. That's where the value of the show lies. You can't just bring on all the same people. All right.
That's a good point.
I mean, I know. It's a great balance. I mean,
Yeah,
I will say this.
exactly.
I mean, as a recap of this entire conversation, you guys were wondering what we were talking about this whole time. We've gone like an hour. If I asked you one question, we've gone an hour.
You asked a big question, though.
One question to all of us
Must be
about
really
all
good.
of us.
All right, all right. Take it easy. I really, really respect and appreciate the relationships that you guys have with one another. I mean, someone said at one point men typically don't like the word vulnerability, but I like to replace that word with authenticity. It sounds a little bit more manly and acceptable, doesn't it? The authenticity that you guys have with one another is really, really admirable and impressive. And I love you guys are so close in age. I mean, my youngest brother is 8 years younger than me, and my oldest brother is 8 years older than me. So we have great relationships, but we didn't go through life at the same time together. And that's what you guys did. I mean, at one point were you guys almost, actually not, probably not, but you're pretty close to all being in high school at the same time or close to it. Like, that's pretty crazy. And life is difficult enough. The external world is hard enough to manage and deal with. So when you have some kind of core and in your family system with your brotherhood where you can be authentic with one another and crazy insightful. I didn't know what you guys were going to say here. I had no idea, but each one of you had really insightful things to say about each other, which means you've thought about this before, which means you're psychologically oriented. And it's really impressive to be able to have that comfort with this type of language. And so there's two things: one, to have the insight, and two, to be able to share it with one another. David said you guys have talked about these kinds of things before here. I mean, I'm prompting these kinds of questions as a psychologist, right? And I have an interest in it, but you guys naturally talk about your differences and the uniqueness of one another. So I really respect it. I really admire it. I appreciate you guys talking about it. And yeah, to your point, Alex, there is a beautiful balance and complementarity of each of you brothers that I think the world would really benefit from if we had more of this kind of dynamic in family life. A thought just came to my mind, though. It's something interesting. Your poor mother, 4 boys. Do you think things would? I mean, obviously things would change. How do you think things would change if there was a sister thrown in here somewhere?
Oof.
Baby number 5 was a little girl. What does that mean for all of you?
Honestly, if it's baby number 5, I don't think it'd mean a whole lot. I think if our oldest sibling was a girl, then like that would have more effect. But
yeah,
because I mean, I think we definitely would act a little bit differently with a girl in the house. But that was even something our dad growing up really emphasizes. With 4 boys and our dad, there was always the temptation to just kind of act like it was a boys' house and just act like we're always hanging with the guys. But I think one thing that I think I definitely benefit from our dad is he really emphasizes like, hey, our mom's a lady. There's things you say around guys that you don't say around women, and so I think it's good that he emphasized that, because I think we are all a lot more kind of prepared of kind of the differences and the dynamic when you're hanging out with men compared to women, and I think it would have been lucky for us to be very unprepared.
Yeah, no, that's very respectful of your dad. Can you give me an example of something you'd say around each other but not around a lady?
I mean, I feel like the most obvious examples are just kind of the jokes we'd make. Yeah, especially on the side of humor. Yeah, like there's I feel like we all like I feel like, again, all of our sense of humors are a little bit different, but I think there's a lot of similarities too, and I think a lot of it is a bit more, I don't know, a bit more gross than maybe something. Again, yeah, I don't know. We're not discussing.
We grew up in the locker room,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true. Because if we had a sister, like, I don't know, there's a tenderness to just having younger siblings.
Yeah.
Like you got to be nice to your little brothers and like even cousins. One of the cool things is on both sides of our family, most of our cousins are here in Arizona.
Yeah.
So we still got a lot of that through
the extended family connection.
Yeah, because we still had those, but we didn't have that.
One of whom is my wife, turns out.
Exactly. Yeah, and your sister-in-law, because Abby was always around, and that also was a huge help to be actually comfortable around, like not all dudes all the time.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think going over
to
that house.
Good.
Sorry, I think going over to Aunt Beth's, like being around Abby, and also like our neighbor, the Mazdas, like with Sam, they have a older girl who's a year or so older than David, however many years, and then a young girl who's like Colby's age. And I think for me, definitely like those would be when I was young. There's like a handful of situations that I could like definitely think back on where it's like moments that I realized like, oh, like that's the shit that I can't do. Like that's not acceptable to like say around girls, you know, like because I got yelled at a couple times by like her older brother because I was like being disrespectful, and I was like, well, sorry, I didn't, but it was definitely different. And I think if I wouldn't have spent that time over there and kind of over at Abby's house, like I think it would be very different for sure. Just like my awareness on all of ours.
Good insight. Yeah, you need that exposure to both genders. It's good. So we have 4 different unique personalities, which I think also reflect 4 different unique approaches to life post high school. We have some college experience. We have some entrepreneurial kind of attitudes. We have non-traditional, like collegiate types of approaches. Can you guys talk about some of these different approaches? This is an important question because I think the world is realizing that college is not for everyone. Like a generation ago, when I was going through high school, college was push, go to college. And then what we found is a lot of people went to college and they didn't finish, or they completed their college experience with a degree that they'd never used, with all sorts of debt and all these issues. But there's this like stigma associated with people who don't go to college, which is silly. In fact, some of the most successful people on earth did not go to college and took an entrepreneurial approach. Is that still in the air for you guys? Like the pressure and push to go to college? And then, just talk a little bit. I mean, I just take turns here. Talk a little bit about what your experience of life post high school has been like for you, and how you either went with what is typical or went with something a little more atypical.
I think it was as your. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Do I literally have to call on someone so you don't talk over each other?
I thought I started.
No, you
way
don't,
before.
Bryan. We'll figure it out.
Can you be grown-ups, please, for a moment? All right, let's just go in alphabetical order this time. Alphabetical order. And I think Alex has the most lag, honestly. Alex, you first.
Well, I was just gonna say, obviously, David's gone through college, graduated college, most education by quite a bit out of the 4 of us. And then obviously there's Colby, who's made his way into college further than Eddie and I. We'll see if he finishes that. And then there's Eddie, who did, like 3 or 4 hours of college classes. And then I've done none. So it's kind of like just gone like that with the whole education thing.
No.
Obviously Colby kind of went out of line. Yeah. But
there's a lot of variance.
Yeah, but I think obviously that was just I think from when we were really young, I mean, I remember being told like you were going to college, that's like what you're doing. Like that was like pretty straightforward in our family when we were young. And then that definitely changed, but like I had no intention of going to college by the time I was a sophomore. David had
Really?
always been planning. Yeah, like by the time I was a
You
sophomore,
knew
in high school,
sophomore
I
year of
already
high school.
knew.
You're like, nah, college.
Yeah, I mean,
How did
like
you know?
I thought I considered art school, but like I knew I was never gonna do like ASU or something like that. Um,
Hmm.
I hated being in school the whole time I was in school, and I wanted to learn art, and all the art teachers I had ever had, it was kind of difficult to go to an art teacher and really take it seriously when they had no like actual success in art. And so I didn't really feel like going to ASU to learn art from an art teacher who's
What does
not
success in art look
really.
like, Alex?
I mean, generally that's in your work. And I've had art teachers who weren't artists like throughout my life in school, like were or maybe artists but not great artists. So I guess to me, I just never really saw a ton of value in the art education that I would have been able to pursue after high school, which was the only education that
Yeah.
I had interest in pursuing. And I thought about like going out of the country for an education, but here I just knew I didn't really care to pursue the art education that I had access to
Would you mind if I probe a
by
little
the
bit
time I
more?
was a sophomore. Yeah, I mean, no.
Yes, I'd mind. Shut up, Bryan. No, I guess I wonder if this is something you're still sorting through, or I'm hearing a couple different things because you're talking about,
I'm sorting.
yeah, some art teachers who were not true artists. I have like a bunch of questions that I think are all connected. What makes a true artist? What makes a true artist successful? What makes a great artist? I mean, is it money? Is it creativity? I mean, art is so subjective in terms of
Yeah.
how it's experienced. So, like, what is success in art and being a great artist look like for you?
Yeah. So more so what I meant is my goal with my art has always been for it to be like my entire um kind of like finance and everything. And if you're not able to teach me how to turn art into like a sustainable like career that's gonna profit me and allow me to
Yeah.
continue, if that's not something you've achieved on your own, then I'm sorry, like I have a hard time really taking you that seriously because like I don't want to teach art. If you were able to just do your art and make a living, like you probably wouldn't be teaching art. And in my experience, that was
True.
generally the case.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess just seeing that where it was like I want to do a whole lot better or like differently. Like I want it to be my whole like finance and like my cash, like
Yeah.
my whole support. So for a lot of artists, they don't even want that. That's never been the goal. But for me, it is. It's what I love, but it's also what I want to do for a living. And
Yeah.
if that's
This
not
reminds me.
something that you've done, it's kind of hard to um, I guess follow in like the footsteps you're laying down for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think this speaks to what we were talking about with you earlier, where like the beauty of having three brothers who would make fun of you if you
Yeah.
went too far into the granola space, where you still have one foot in the mainstream. I mean, there are artists out there that really don't care about whether or not they ever make a dime ever. But for you,
Yeah.
there's this part of you that also likes football, that also wants to make some money and financially provide for yourself and maybe even for a family at some point. So there is this part of you that's
Good
still
point.
kind of connected to the mainstream world. and another part of you that has a creative dimension to it. And personally, I understand that quite a bit. I mean, believe it or not, this whole show is an expression of my own creative energies and my art. And whether or not it's ever successful does matter to me. I do want it to be successful. I'm not going to express this as some kind of pure ideal that I would be doing the podcast if no one was listening. No, like I want people to listen. I would like this to be have an impact on people. I would want my art to reach people, and I would want it to affect people in a positive way. Now, how they're going to perceive that art, you can never really control. But I think there is something important about having, I guess, one foot on the shore and one foot in the water. Like delving into that creative space, but also being realistic in terms of the practical dimensions of life. Now, there's nothing wrong with not doing that, but that's the kind of artist I am, and I think that's the kind of artist you are. And it takes a lot of courage, doesn't it? Because you're walking out into a space that's not carved for you. And you said earlier that you have there's this narrow path of what'll make you happy, and outside of that path, you're not going to be happy. So it's this blend of having the courage to step out into this space where you're not sure how it's going to work out, and you're forging a new path, but you're sure that this is what you want to do and go in that direction, regardless of the consequences. There's a great movie. You guys ever see the movie Rounders?
No.
It's about poker. It's about poker. It's a great film with Matt Damon, and he's talking to a mentor during the time at one point in the film, and he's talking, and the mentor is talking about how he left the yeshiva. He's a path to be a rabbi, and instead entered law, and he became a lawyer. And this is because the main character, Matt Damon's character, is deciding whether or not he wants to be a lawyer or he wants to play poker. Right. And poker is obviously very unconventional, but from the lawyer mentor in his world, actually being a lawyer was very unconventional because he was being groomed and prepared to be a rabbi. Right. And it's a great conversation. I highly recommend the movie. But Matt Damon asked him at the end of this conversation, as the rabbi was talking about his life, he says, if you had a choice, would you do it all? If you had to do it all again, would you make the same choice? And the rabbi says, what choice? There is no choice. There was no choice. I could not be a rabbi. I felt this deep conviction to pursue this path of the law. I fell in love with civil law. And that's what I hear from you, Alex. It's like, there's no choice. This is what I have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I agree with that. Yeah, that's accurate. The other thing I wanted to say is, I definitely have had a lot of good art teachers, and I didn't want it to sound like I don't want to be taught or something like that. But most of the people who have taught me the most, I guess, about art, maybe weren't even necessarily artists, or they were artists, but they weren't teaching art. I've just met a lot of great artists. And so I think for me, it was just that I felt I could find those artists and kind of people to look up to without school. And I wasn't super confident that I could find that in school. So it's not that I don't want to be taught or that I haven't had great teachers. I just, I guess I am not, I wasn't of the mind that I was going to find the people to teach me in that traditional way of going to college, just because that's not where I found it the rest of my life. So I didn't want to keep going down that road.
That's cool. I respect that. Hard decision to make, but your heart is your heart. All right, alphabetical order here. A, B, C, D. David.
Yep.
Talk about your post-high school experience and why you chose to go to college and graduate with a degree apparently that you don't like.
Yeah. Well, I think Alex and I have had almost exactly opposite decision making with this, with very similar things that we find interesting, which I think has been interesting for me to watch him deal with, but also it's been a weird thing to deal with myself. But yeah, we talked about this earlier. I think I agree with what Alex said about the general intelligence level of our family. I'm not like way smarter than my siblings. Like, we're all very intelligent, and I see it very obviously in a lot of different aspects of their lives. But I think for me, I was always just really good at school. Like, not even that I was particularly gifted at understanding the content. I just was good at taking tests and learning what teachers wanted and behaving well. And like, I do good in that environment. Well, and even regardless of that, I just like, I want to please people. And the way you please people in a school environment is you do well on tests and you do your homework. So it's like,
David, you're stealing my thunder. I was going to make the connection between what you said earlier about people pleasing and doing well in school. Yeah. great self knowledge and awareness there.
Well, and I think it's part of what's been interesting now. And I think it was, I guess now looking back, it's probably what you were alluding to with the only one that graduated college who didn't want his degree. But I
thought you said you didn't like engineering. That's what I was referencing.
No, and I don't. That's what I'm saying. You're right. My path to it was, I got to my senior year of high school, and all I knew is I have the financial support through my like scholarships and stuff that ASU, Arizona State, would basically be free. So I didn't even apply anywhere else. Like, I only applied to ASU. And when I got to the end of it, you have to like pick the major you're applying to so that you can get into that school. Because like the engineering school, the business school, they're all different. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my buddy sitting next to me literally picked my major for me, which is why I went through a couple, because like I didn't even pick my first one. So I had to like own it at some point. But I think school is really valuable for me, more because it gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people. Like, ASU is gigantic, and I got to have a bunch of experiences there, and it gave me like a little bit of a offset to figure out my life before I had to start working and like go full-blown adult.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I appreciated most about college. Like,
sure,
I did not take my faith as seriously as I did by the end of college when I went into college, which is not like a classic college situation.
Usually the other way around, right?
Yeah, especially at ASU. Like, that is not where you find God.
People lose their faith in college frequently.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that was really big for me. And honestly, the biggest place that I learned information that's been helpful for me now is through door to door, because I graduated in electrical engineering, and right now I work at an engineering firm, and I love it there. Like, it is, the people there are amazing. It's a really good environment. I really enjoy my time there, but the engineering side, like, I could take or leave. I'm pretty like apathetic to connection. Yeah, it's the people. And what I really enjoy is how you take anything and make it successful, and how you help people see the value in what you do, which was what we did in door to door. Like, my first job post graduating was running the business development of a little engineering firm, which I had no experience in. It kicked my butt, but I did a lot of things there that's like, okay, those are the things that I really love and I'm good at. But it's just weird, because when you get a degree, you have these unspoken confines of what you can do. Like,
which are not real. You know that. Those ideas are to help people deal with the anxiety of life coming really quickly and and college students being scared of what they're going to do. But the average person changes careers so many times over the course of their lives. I mean, I'm not trained as a podcaster, guys.
Yeah. Well, and you went to your undergrad for something totally different too, didn't you?
I was a history major.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I went to graduate school for theology, and then I went to another graduate school for psychology. And then I do provide some direct care in terms of psychology now, but in my current career, I'm chief of staff, which is managing personnel and I was an operations director for a little while. I failed at that miserably. But I mean, as your career progresses, you try different things, and you have to learn new skill sets on the job that college never prepared you for. And the areas where you're most successful, it comes from places that are like the most unlikely of places. It's like Lord of the Rings. Courage comes from the most unlikely of places. No, but seriously, like my management skills come from playing World of Warcraft. You know, like I worked in a restaurant for 20 years and I learned how to deal with people. You don't think that affected my clinical skills? Like I hear you guys talk over and over again about the impact of sales for you. And that makes you so much more well-rounded. And you're not, I mean, even for you, David, you're not going to be sitting at a cubicle just calculating and, engineering mathematics. It's this expansion of, okay, I do know this, but the position that I want is going to include an integration of relating to people and knowledge of the engineering. Right. So, it's just because people are scared of life. Life is scary. I mean, Eddie's not, he's trusting everything's fine for Eddie, but beyond Eddie, people are scared of what's going to happen in life. And so we try to like almost prophesize what our path is going to be and come up with a path. But the reality is you have to trust and trust that your experiences all along the way are building towards future experiences, which you can't even access yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think like even right now, the thing that's been unusual is when I was graduating, which isn't that long ago from high school, the thought of being able to make money with like anything, like you could make money, especially with how people use TikTok and YouTube and social media and everything.
Yeah.
You can truly use any gift if you're passionate enough and turn it into like a real career.
It's a new world.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting for me because I do enjoy my work, and the life that I have right now is something that I think still is meaningful and good for me. But at the same time, there are things that I am passionate about that are just like, they have to be hobbies because I have a full-time job.
For now.
It's a weird...
For now.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So it's just interesting because I think with how Alex did it, he removed that as an option. Like it is his only thing.
Right. Yeah. Right from the jump.
For good
Alex
or bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, really quickly, I think it's pretty important to note that like also by the time like my sophomore year, I didn't really probably have much of an option to go to school because I was dealing with like addiction problems in high school. So while I don't think I ever really wanted to do that a whole lot. It also really wasn't an option because I completely burnt like 3 years of high school to the ground. So like I didn't have the grades to do that if I wanted to. So I kind of had one choice there in my eyes. Yeah.
Well, lucky for you, even though you burned those bridges, your actual skill and interests didn't need those bridges and doesn't need those bridges.
Yeah. But I will say, like, I understand the feeling of like being on the other side and looking at David's, what he's got and thinking all the time, like, I wish I had like just something, to fall back on, because like David has that, forever. He'll always have that. And I could have nothing at any given time, it's really scary, for the rest of my life if all things go according to plan.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's what David's. Well, the interesting thing though, that what I hear David saying is, yeah, I have this to fall back on, but I don't quite know. There's a part of me that isn't sure that this is what I want to do. You know, like I have hobbies and interests, and there's other things that are just kind of calling to me from within myself, that maybe those become my source of income someday, you know?
Yeah. I think ultimately the place that David gets to is like the best place though, where like he'll find that relationship of being able to do his hobbies more so than he is now, but also he will have that education as well, where it's like, I'll never have that, you know. He could find like a really good balance between the both of them. I don't really know that.
Go ahead, David.
I was going to say, that being said, like, yes, I have a literal degree that like I'll always have, and I have like my work experience and whatever, but we haven't talked to obviously Eddie yet, but Eddie's a huge example of like, that's not always needed either. Because even just having your sales ability, like the job you do now, just on the side, like you could get something like that whenever you want, just because of your experience doing sales.
It's a both and.
Weird.
It's a great point, David, and it's a both and. I mean, I've gotten some high level degrees over the course of my life. I've gotten a bachelor's degree, I got a master's degree, and I got a doctorate. And as I was going through those things, there was a part of me that felt relief in saying, well, it's like you're rock climbing, you know, to get all granola with Alex here. You're rock climbing. It's like you're putting the pinion in the rock, and it's like, if I fall, I can't fall below this point, right? It's like the rope is tied to this point. I can't fall. But the reality is, so having that does reduce a little bit of distress, which I think is Alex's point. But there's a part of me that, like, I don't ever want to look back on those degrees. Like, I want to keep climbing. I don't want to look back on that lower point. I don't ever want to use it. I'm never going to use a degree in history. Like, if I'm at a point where, you know, I'm 42, 43 years old, if I call, you know, put in an application for an insurance company and I'm like, here's my bachelor's degree in history, or if I want to be like a history teacher or whatever it is, like those degrees, they do create some opportunities, but I don't think they necessarily create passion. And that's what, I mean, I think there's an anxiety we all have, especially as men, to be able to provide. Right. So the angst around providing is always there. And to have a degree makes you feel like if worse comes to worse, I can always fall back on this. So I wanted to validate like Alex's view on that. But where I would align with David, like we have degrees and it doesn't really add up to very much at all. It's really a piece of paper, and you can like march into a lot of different professional opportunities or create your own professional opportunities where you don't need a piece of paper at all. So I think it's a both and. Like I get both of you looking at each other's position and being like, yeah, I see where you're at and I can validate where you're at, because, you know, both realities are true. David, anything else you wanted to add, or should we shuffle along?
I'd probably say shuffle along. I think
he's got an album coming up 1 month.
Do not. No,
you kind of look like you're in a sound studio right now. You're talking about these hobbies.
I am actually. This is my roommate's bedroom. I have a few roommates. One of them is a professional musician. Well, technically two are, but one is like studio type. Yeah. And since last time there was a lot of echoey stuff, I stole his room. So this
look at the blueprint, making it work, being prepared for the podcast. I love it.
Always. Also was the only one on before we started.
Best in class. All right.
I've been ready.
Eddie's, as Colby said, did just the right amount to be prepared today. Eddie.
Yes.
Post high school life. Talk to us about your experience.
Yeah. Well, one thing I know when you started the question is you're asking like if there's still kind of the pressure, like as much there was when you were going through school to go to college. And I feel like
Yeah.
we'd both, I mean, generally speaking, I think we'd all agree there's still some level of that pressure, but David and I went to or graduated from a smaller school where that was really, really expected. Um,
Mm.
it wasn't, it was a small school and everyone who went there, like there's a lot of students who went there who would, move on to schools like, Stanford and Princeton. And it again
Ivy
is
League
very
schools and
academically focused,
yeah.
not a whole lot of attention paid to like extracurriculars or even a lot of the sports and whatnot. So, I feel like I definitely did. I'd imagine with Alex and Colby having gone to a much larger public high school where they have a lot of different options as far as your courses, and it kind of gets your wheels spinning a little bit. But I going through high school always planned on going to college, and I started at Mesa Community because my grades were good. They weren't great. So a full ride to ASU, from what I remember, wasn't really realistic, but it was really easy to go to Mesa Community for free. Um, so I did that, and then as far as going to Mesa Community for free, part of the guidelines of the scholarship was I had to maintain, I think, above a 3.5. And after my first semester, I got I think it was literally like a 3.4, 3.3, like
Ugh.
not bad grades, not super far off, but not enough to maintain the scholarship. So
Just pause for a second. I think parents
yeah,
often today are in a tough position where they're preparing their children for school, and they know that when you're an adult, you realize actually how much money school is. It's absolutely absurd the amount of money it costs to go to college, and so there could be a pressure, I think, from parents uh, that gets put on kids to perform academically so that they can get scholarships, because otherwise, how else is anyone going to pay for this?
yeah, and that's something I definitely remember our parents telling us from a pretty young age, where it's like we didn't grow up in like immense struggle or anything, but we definitely didn't have a lot of money. And again, expectations definitely says like if college is
It's like a hundred
important for
thousand
you and it
dollars for a
should
degree
be,
these
then
days. Yeah,
right. And they
more
they
than that, right?
I mean, I feel like it really all depends, but yeah, I mean, it's a lot. And even in-state tuition at ASU without a lot of scholarship help is really expensive. So
Yeah.
yeah, I remember understanding pretty early on that if I wanted to go to college, then I really needed to like get something as far as scholarships, or at least kind of understanding that that'd make things a lot easier. But after I lost my scholarship to MCC, obviously I had to have the conversation where, my parents weren't going to pay for it. It was something I need to make sure I could pay for myself. And I think that was around the point where I was like, well, what am I actually doing here, kind of thing. Because I was just studying for just kind of your basic. I had really no plan. I was like, well, it was almost like I knew what things I didn't want. I was like, well, I don't want to go to anything that requires more than 4 years. So that took off, like medical school or anything like that. And I was like, well, I also don't
Yeah.
want to do anything very math intensive. So that kind of threw like things like engineering. And so I was like, business seems pretty easy and it seems pretty vague and gives me options. So yeah, that was the
That
plan.
says
And
that
then
right there says something about your intelligence, though. Business, that's pretty easy. Like business isn't easy for everyone. The fact that it came easy to you, like, says something about your own kind of intellectual prowess.
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, Brian. And I
Well,
think
go ahead. Hey,
it.
receive the compliment and the affirmation, Eddie. Going back to the earlier point where Colby was like, I don't know how Eddie is doing well in finance. He has no training whatsoever. I
Right.
mean, the fact that it's like easy to you, and that like that's a sign of your giftedness in that area.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, at least my experience with school was, I never found school to be like particularly challenging. Again, it's pretty easy for me to put in pretty minimal work or effort and maintain kind of around like a B average. Um, but again, after I started having to pay for school, I was like, well, this doesn't feel worth it for me. Or if I'm going to actually do this, I've got to really figure out what I want to do, because I really didn't want to
Sure.
find myself in a position where I'd paid myself to the end of school just because it seemed like, well, if you don't have any better ideas, might as well stay in school. And
Yeah.
again, I just didn't want to end up in a bunch of debt with a degree I didn't care about. So,
Like me.
like David, well, yeah, I don't know. You
I
at
do
least
care
have
about my degree.
some
I
good
do care about my
ones.
degree though, and I do think an lest we just like poop on all undergraduate degrees here. I think
Mhm.
even going through an undergraduate degree does help you learn how to think a very specific way, which can be applied to a lot of different contexts. But anyway, sorry, go
Mhm.
on. I love my degree in
No,
history. Go on.
yeah, and I will say because I mean I've completed again. This is over the span of a couple of years because originally I completed my first semester at MCC, and then my second semester I was doing all online, and that's around the time when I started doing door to door, which again was door to door sales, same as what David did. He did pest control, I did alarms, and my original plan was to again kind of help use that money now that I was paying for school and stay in school, but um, honestly, I saw a lot of a lot of the lives people even just through door to door sales were living, and I was like, well, I might be able to actually figure this out eventually, and it seems like. Um, Again, it was something I actually felt fairly passionate about and was interested to improve at. And I was like, well, I'm going to work a lot harder than this than at school because I'm actually, interested in improving. So,
There you go. That
yeah, so I
motivation's
did,
everything.
yeah. And I know David mentioned it earlier. I really, really struggled at first because I am very naturally introverted. And I think a lot of those people skills and kind of the boldness it takes to do door to door was very much a learned skill and not something that came naturally. But yeah, my first month, and again, 100% commission selling alarms, I didn't sell anything. I was knocking probably 60, 70 doors a day out in Bay Area, California. And yeah, literally sold nothing to the point, and this is almost unheard of, but to the point where my managers they were like starting to make cuts with certain people that really weren't performing. And most of them it was because they weren't trying. But here I was actually trying, and I'm having a conversation with my manager where it's like, you've got kind of a couple of weeks to kind of show that you're headed in the right direction, or we're not
Yeah.
gonna, pay for your living and different things. So luckily, I kind of figured it out at the last minute, and I know that sense of accomplishment was big for me, and it really
Oh yeah.
kind of propelled me into
Like
the next couple of years, just trying to do
yeah,
better and better
got
and
some
better.
momentum
So
snowballed. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I'll say this. One thing I picked up on with you is, I mean, look, like everything I'm going to say is totally unfair because I live on the other side of the country and see you guys. I mean, now it's been a couple years since I've seen you in person, but I mean, even when I was coming around more regularly when I lived in Denver, it was like once or twice a year. But something I
right,
picked up on with you, Eddie, is you're certainly way more quiet once upon a time, way more quiet,
right,
and I felt like I needed to like get you going to get a response from you. I'd kind of dig a little bit. Not that there wasn't a tremendous amount of heart and personality there, but I always wanted more to know about you. It was interesting to hear some earlier reflections on how you are still sort of private with who you are. But there's a part of me that's like, I made that joke. Like, what are you hiding? Like, I want to know more about you and what I've seen. There's definitely like a before and after sales, and I've seen this after dimension of your personality, this part of you come forth that's way more extroverted. And I've seen a lot more of your humor. You always told funny jokes in the background historically, but now you're more willing to like put them forth for
right.
people to for people to laugh at. And it's awesome to see. I think I'm so grateful for that sales experience for you because I feel like I know what's going on with you way more than I used to, even though I wanted to know more then. So I'm
Yeah,
grateful for it.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely one of. I mean, I definitely tell this to people all the time that one of my favorite things just coming out of sales is I really did and still do feel like those skills are just so applicable more than just in a professional setting and as a way to
To
make
everything.
money where, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, where it felt like as I started to improve and see my numbers go up from averaging 0 a week the first month to maybe, two or three, four or five, and, so on and so forth, like it, um, obviously that felt great, and it felt great to feel
Here,
like I was improving. Go ahead.
yeah, no, here's the other thing about it that we never really talk about here, which always amazed me, is that like all of you were like young. You're like, goodbye. I'm out. I'm going to the other side of the country. I'm going to figure out this thing far away from my parents. Like the amount of like maturity that happens just by being away from your parents and trying to figure things out on your own in a very adult capacity. David came to my house in the middle of his sales experience, and he almost like fell on his face on my doorstep. That's how hard it was. Like he was absolutely spent. He's like, people I know and a warm meal. This is amazing. Like you guys all did something very, very hard, and it probably helped you mature quite a bit. Is that fair to say, Eddie?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was, I think even just growing up, having the discipline enforced on us where it's like, a lot of what you want and the way you want to feel and the things that you desire on kind of the other side of, sucking it up and doing things you may not want to do. So
Yeah.
I feel like it was probably the biggest thing like that in my life where I was like, this sucks. And especially that first month sucked. And I remember one night in particular where it was the end of a long day knocking, hadn't sold anything still, we're probably a couple weeks in at this point. And I was just sobbing. I was talking to my mom, just sobbing on the phone. And she was asking, she was like, well, oh, you can come home. Like, we'll get you a plane ticket. Like, it's fine. Like, you've worked hard, like, blah, blah, blah.
No.
Yeah, and that was definitely part of stubbornness where it's like, I can't lose at this. I think I'm a very competitive person. I was like, this would be me kind of admitting that I can't do it kind of thing.
Is that football?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm just naturally a very competitive person. I think football is, at least growing up, the biggest way that was kind of shown. But I think really any game or anything where I feel like there's a winner, I feel like I've always like, really tried to do what I can to win. Be on the winning side of things. But yeah, definitely instilled a lot of discipline, and I think it's huge. And even what I'm doing now, which is very different, I think it almost sets the bar so low where it's like if you can get used to doing that for a year or two, coming out of that, you're going to
confidence builder, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Colby, I'm really proud of you for holding your tongue for this long.
I was muted. I didn't actually. You would have heard many.
Well, I appreciate the self-control to mute yourself, knowing that you don't have self-control. I really respect that. All right. So you're still in college. We're not sure if you're going to graduate someday.
No one is. Yeah.
Tell us about your decision post-high school.
I mean, yeah, we're definitely still very much in the midst of it. I decided to, well, I guess we'll start from the beginning. So a lot of now is because of in high school. So I did door-to-door sales between my junior and senior year of high school.
Where?
With David out in Arkansas.
With David.
Yeah.
But even still, that's pretty insane for a high school student to leave his family as a minor and go to Arkansas, which is a very different culture than Arizona. Like that probably toughened you up, right?
Yeah. I mean, that definitely was huge. Like, insanely massive, because at the beginning of my junior year, I think I was pretty dumb my sophomore year. So junior year, I was starting to understand that I need to have my stuff under control. So I started getting into working out and then talking to David. Obviously, he had already done it. Eddie had already done it. Alex hadn't. But yeah, so just kind of talking to them, I definitely was a lot more willing and ready to kind of get my stuff together because I'd seen them do it. But it was
good
huge.
Models, good examples.
Yeah. But after high school, definitely, I think I was the only one who didn't have the pressure in high school of college being an absolute necessity. Like the option was opened up, or I wouldn't say opened up, but it was definitely, I saw it.
Alex and Eddie took the edge off for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's how it was with everything. Because David, I mean, private Catholic elementary school, honors middle school and high school. Eddie was the same thing. And then Alex, Catholic elementary school, honors, academy for middle school, and then high school was public. So I was the same. Catholic elementary school, that middle school, and then some freshman year at that same school, but then public. So that was definitely big because I had the door-to-door background while also understanding that my future doesn't have to be in college, and it doesn't have to be super, by the book, like I said David's was earlier. But I still did choose to do that. I chose to go out to Franciscan. And I think a big thing that Eddie mentioned about college for all of us is that our parents weren't helping out, which obviously none of us ever, said anything negative when we all understand it, but it definitely poses a lot bigger deal of college because now, I'm having to pay $15,000 myself.
It's on you.
Yeah. So that was tough because I wanted a degree in finance and I still do. But at that time, the opportunity with door-to-door is nowhere near as big as it was now. Because I'm the only one who's still doing door-to-door sales.
Oh.
So
when? Like on school breaks?
I do over the summers, and so this summer I'll manage a team out in Charlotte. Last summer I co-managed a team out in Raleigh, so North Carolina.
Why don't you co-manage a team in Connecticut, where I am? That's selfish of you.
Yeah, very unfortunate. I wish I could.
As long as you knock weekends, As long as Colby can get his override on you, Bryan, I think he'll be just fine.
Come on out, and I'll help you out. But yeah, I think for me, a lot more of my future I can see being in door-to-door. I think it's pretty cool having gone to Franciscan for my freshman year and now being a part of a company where we do have a door-to-door sales branch that is almost exclusively young Catholic men.
Wait, how old are you? You're 19. What year in school are you?
Sophomore, technically. Well, barely, but
halfway through your sophomore year. What do you mean technically?
Technically speaking. Well, like my credits,
Year?
Well, I'm taking 2 classes back home right now, so like technically I'm probably still a freshman, but I am a sophomore age student. I don't know.
He redshirted.
You're a sophomore. You're just a little.
I'm a sophomore. I'm a sophomore student at Franciscan University of Steubenville.
Okay. Hold on. Did you do full time for 2 semesters your freshman year and pass those classes?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Sophomore.
Yeah, I'm a sophomore. I took one less credit per semester, so I don't know. But yes, I'm a sophomore student. Sorry, I made that insanely confusing.
I'm proud of you. Well, this is fascinating. You don't have have you declared a major?
Yeah, business finance, so double major in business management and finance.
So this is really interesting because you are taking the college path, working towards an undergraduate degree, but then you want to do door-to-door.
Right. So I'm kind of a mix. Well, I'm kind of a mix.
And he could get a job in his major without getting a degree.
No, Alex, obviously we talked about has his like art interests and David has his college. I really am into cars and I have enjoyed door-to-door. So my goal right now is right now I'm currently detailing cars, so I'm trying to get that business going to a point where I can fund my enjoyments while also continuing to get a degree while continuing sales. So I have like 3 safety nets.
Wow.
He has no idea what he's doing.
You guys, I'm getting more. The more I speak, the more confused I am because I've never been more confident in my decisions than I am right now. But the more I talk, the less confident I seem in my decisions.
I'm certainly not. Hopefully, that's not my influence by asking you difficult questions. No, I think it's wonderful that you have those that confidence. I mean, I think what you're expressing is that there's a potential for multiple revenue streams for you. And if you could bring them all together, great. But either way, you're creating pathways for yourself.
Right, because that's been my goal. Is I started college because I know that having a degree is valuable, and that part of my upbringing where college was encouraged, I do understand why it was encouraged, and I agree that it should be encouraged for a lot of people. which is why I decided to pursue a degree. And I don't plan on ending that pursuit. So I do plan on getting a degree, whether that's in person or online, I'm not sure. But no part of my plan is questioning finishing college.
Sure.
Because I want a degree. So that's part of it. And door-to-door sales, for me, the longer I've done it, the better opportunities I've had. And I'm sure that's the same with 90% of things in life. But I'm now able to manage a team with other guys, and the other guys are, 25, 26 years old. So being able to be a part of that circle is cool, and being able to be a part of the entrepreneurial circle at Franciscan is cool. And
the maturity here is absurd. I couldn't manage myself at 19, much less manage.
I'm not.
I couldn't manage myself at 25, to be honest with you.
It really might sound like I am, but I'm not managing it. I'm just trying to push all these things along. No, but yeah, it's definitely been tough. I think that is the part.
What's tough about it?
I think that I am very different from people that I was friends with at school, especially. I think the way my brain works is odd, and that I'm extremely, extremely stubborn and similar to Eddie in the fact that, if my mind comes to the conclusion that I think something's going to be beneficial for me, I'm going to do it until I'm done. Like college, for example, coming home from school, I didn't want to look at that as a defeat, because just because I'm coming home from school doesn't mean I'm not doing it. I'm just focusing my attention elsewhere. So I think that part of it is similar, but also like David's part where having stability is.
Do you feel like some of your fellow students are immature?
I wouldn't say immature. I think everybody has the things that they want to pursue, and the things that I want to pursue, I think, take a little different determination and discipline to get there.
Do you feel supported by fellow students in the uniqueness of your journey?
I think so, but older. My immediate people that I text for a lot of issues are, my fellow managers. So one of them's name is Mikey. He's 25. The other one's Ian, 26, turning 27. So, and even in high school, Alex's friends were often my friends. Obviously not solely, but I did hang around them a lot. So I think I've always appreciated having people that know more than me telling me how I should handle certain situations.
Well, we're pretty much talking about the fact that you're the youngest of 4 brothers, right? Essentially, this is a projection of the experience that you had at the moment of conception from that point forward.
Yeah.
No, you're around, 3 older brothers, and that's probably tough in its own way, being the youngest, trying to keep up with what their interests are, or, you physically, it's easy to beat on your younger brother, and just, but you always want to hang out with your cool older brothers and learn from them. And now it's probably benefited you. Now you're at a point where you're okay as you're developing professionally with,
for sure,
with experiencing the wisdom and support and direction of people who are in a more advanced position than you, right?
Right. I would agree with that.
That's great. Part of the show is exploring the concept of integration. In my professional life, it's of great interest to me to integrate psychology and questions of faith and spirituality. I can't help but associate each of you and your personal formation from a Catholic perspective with City of the Lord. That's how you guys basically learned what it means to be Catholic. Now, Catholic, the very word Catholic means universal, which means there are a lot of different expressions of what it means to be Catholic. But you guys were formed in a very unique context. City of the Lord is a covenant community. Is that correct? It's a covenant community. It's not the only covenant community. There are many different ones, right? So
a covenant charismatic community.
Oh, I love
Important.
It.
Freaking dog.
I love it. Tell me what that is. What is a covenant charismatic community?
Go ahead, Dov.
Say, Dov, you'll start us off here.
I saw them move for it. I was like, you guys can do it if you want.
What is it?
Yeah, so Covenant Charismatic Community. To be fair, we grew up in it. We didn't choose it. So there are aspects of being in a Covenant community that had nothing to do with us. Because City of the Lord specifically was based on the style of community that Sword of the Spirit is, which is it's like one of the original communities of this type. I think based in Detroit, but somewhere in the Midwest. I don't know if Detroit even counts the Midwest. Whatever. But we were in it our whole lives. So my mom was in City of the Lord her whole life too. Our grandparents were one of the original families of this community. But the covenant component of City of the Lord is that the families and the people who are in the community are making a commitment to it that's more than just like we're going to come around when it's convenient or when it makes sense. To like, for example, we'd have meetings every other Sunday after Mass, and it was going beyond like these are a group of families that support each other. It's like we're making a covenant with one another and with the Lord that we're going to live our faith together
intentionally,
and that we're in an intentional way, in a way that's more than just like we're all close to each other and this makes sense. And I think a huge benefit of that is it's so easy to just bail when it's tricky, especially with relationships, because a lot of those were families. So it's like there are times when it's stressful with kids or school is busy or whatever. And if you're not committed in a way that's more than just whatever works, you're not going to stick around very long. And what was really powerful, I think, for us growing up is we had family friends who we saw every other week, no matter what. And we oftentimes hated that because like kids don't like commitments really when like you're young, and knowing that every other Sunday we'd have to go hang out with old people, like people our parents' age, and then hang out with some people that we liked, but a lot of kids that we didn't get along with or were weird or whatever. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to do this. But there was a lot of power in, especially for our parents, in having family friends and people that they were living their faith with who were faithful and consistent. So that's the covenant aspect and the power, I think, in that. Charismatic and is just to ask a question here. It's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that the original founders of City of the Lord essentially looked around at the world and found that it was filled with a set of values which were in conflict with a Catholic set of values. And so the idea was to sort of circle the wagons, so to speak, and to live intentionally with other Catholics who want to live a very specific way, to the point of even living in the same like relatively close location, right? And it's sort of additive to being Catholic. Like there's Catholic requirements of being Catholic, and then there's this other dimension of commitment, covenant, as you put it, where we're going to intentionally live in a community in a way that safeguards and protects our values. Is that fair to say? Yeah, and I can't speak to like the exact reasons why they started City of the Lord because I don't actually know, but that is definitely how it played out. It was like our families are getting isolated and we want to have a way to raise our children in this community that has the same values as we do and is fighting to live the Catholic faith like we are.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. What did you guys we'll give David a moment to exhale for a moment here. What did you guys like about the experience? Eddie, Colby, Alex.
I think the community, obviously, but more so like being able to have almost like access to like our parents' whole network of people. Like they, through City of the Lord, I mean, there's families for everything. And I think even in a professional aspect for me, I mean, there's people in there who are surgeons and did however many years of school and are making a ton of money, who are thinking the same way as families where both parents are teachers or both are very involved in mission work, so they're not making a lot of money. Where it's like, it doesn't matter how much money you have or what your job is. Our goal as people here is all the same. And there we're always on the same page with that. Like
And the
everybody
goal is,
always understood it.
What's the shared goal?
It is Christ. I mean, Christ is the center of it all. And you have your spouse and your family and your career, almost in that order, and then Christ topping all of those. So I think seeing that was definitely cool for me. Just, I mean, there is a whole lot of variety, and you don't like being Catholic isn't one set thing. You can be Catholic in whatever you want and just apply.
It's that extra layer of support and connection around something that isn't even necessarily explicitly Catholic. It's
right.
You're a surgeon, but because we have this centeredness around Christ and being Catholic, we have support in all these other areas as well.
Right.
I think for me, what I would say it provided is it made it like really, really clear to me what it looks like to be Catholic, and I wasn't ever super confused about that. And I think I would have been had it not been for City of the Lord, because like going to Catholic school, I think it's really easy for people to think like those are Catholics, this is what it is to be Catholic, but like that's not necessarily true like at all. And obviously, like you go to Catholic school and you have to be there. It's not that necessarily you want to live that way or that your views align or even necessarily your parents do. They might just value money and a good education. And that usually comes with private schools. So I think it was really like clear to me what it actually meant to be Catholic, and not just like to throw it around. I knew a lot of Catholic kids who weren't really Catholic. It's like if you were a Catholic kid at City of the Lord, like it was generally your parents took this shit really seriously, and we were being raised to value the same stuff. That wasn't necessarily true anywhere else. But I think that I always knew that everyone wanted the same things for their family and for the other families in City of the Lord as well. And then like Colby said, I think there was never any confusion about like God, spouse, family, like just what's valuable when it really
work,
comes
hobbies,
down to
etc.
and
all the way down.
That's cool. So I think just as far as like the examples of men and women and marriage and just that whole thing, it was really reaffirming. I feel like it still is reaffirming to be around, I feel like, because it's kind of great to see that like your parents valued the things they were supposed to be, and they're bringing the things into the home that they're supposed to be. And I don't know.
Eddie, what did you value about the City of the Lord experience growing up?
Yeah, well, I think like David mentioned, I think, as far as like a lot of the earliest memories, like yes, there are definitely like some fun events we'd have and these different picnics and different outings where we'd go with people, the community, and it'd be a fun experience as a kid. But a lot of it definitely was, I remember, almost like dreading it, where it's like I'm already going to mass for an hour and that's already boring enough. It's like what the heck? Now I got this 2 hours.
Mass is boring for kids.
Right. And it's like now I've got to get home from that, and because it was always right after each other. We go to 11 o'clock mass, and I think community usually started at like 12:30 or 1. So for a while, it just seemed like, again, boring, something I didn't want to do. But when at least in my life, when it really became a lot more valuable, is I think City of the Lord, more than any other thing in my life, it really helped make the faith a lot more personal. Because I think it's easy, just being raised in the church, going to Catholic school and going to mass every Sunday, like, I don't know, you just get so used to it and you see everyone doing it, and a lot of times you don't even stop to kind of reflect or to really focus on your own kind of relationship with the faith and with Christ. So
Yeah.
I think City Lord, and one of the more powerful, at least specific memories I have is we always, most of the retreats we went on, I know churches generally have retreats besides, but City of the Lord always had them, like kids retreats, teen retreats, and my first retreat experience was a City Lord Kids retreat, and they really, and again, it's all kids. Obviously, you have some teen counselors and maybe some adults besides, but there's a lot of emphasis on, making the faith become your own and really, taking your personal prayer life seriously and, spending that time in silence and trying to really, hear God and understand, um, kind of what his path for you is. And I think just through those retreats and some other things that they had that were kind of similar, faith became a lot more something that was talked about and that was just kind of assumed part of life, to where it's like faith is alive and it's real and my personal relationship is important, and there's things that I can do to improve that, and there's things I can do to detract from it. And I think it just made it a lot more real and made the faith a lot more personal.
Yeah, that's great. I think I have a constellation of questions that are related, but I'm not sure which question to ask specifically. So anything that I put out there, just grab it and respond. So we know that we cannot just take on the faith of our parents. We can't just have the same relationship with God that our parents have. And for one's life in spirituality, if it is going to have any legs whatsoever, we have to have our own personal experience with Christ, right? Otherwise, it's just like, I'll take your word for it, mom or dad, mom and dad, mom or dad, whatever. It's not mine. It's something that's given to me. And I know that in my own life, I had to make my faith my own somewhere in my mid-20s, which differed in some ways from the faith that was given to me directly from my parents. I mean, I'm Italian American, figured out there might be some superstition in the beliefs that my parents gave to me. I had to figure that out on my own, but that's just one example of, I think, of every person needing to have their own encounter with Christ. I'm interested in what Eddie was saying about that personal relationship. And I know that you guys were raised in a very specific context. Your formation was a very specific context, which I forget who said it. I think Alex might have said it's not necessarily like synonymous with being Catholic to be in City of the Lord. There are a lot of different ways to be Catholic, but it's the one you guys were raised in, right? So I'm wondering where you guys are at in your faith now. Do you practice your Catholic faith? I mean, I haven't talked to you guys in a couple of years, at least, about this. Do you practice your Catholic faith? Do you practice from a Catholic perspective? Do you practice the City of the Lord expression of that? Are you involved in the community? In going out into the world, have you encountered ways of being Catholic that are more that resonate with you more personally? So yeah, I think all these thoughts are kind of connected, but I don't, take whatever you want from what I just said. Like, where are you guys at now in your relationship to City of the Lord, to being Catholic, to God? I mean, who knows? I had a guest that I was a longtime friend that told me he was an atheist on this show, and I didn't even know it. So, like, I guess I just want to open things up with where you guys are at personally. now.
I think part of City of the Lord and especially what Eddie was talking about with the retreats, I don't know if they're intentionally meant to do this, but a big thing for me was that they did cause a reflection of myself and my own spiritual life. And I mean, I don't remember how old exactly, but our first kids retreat was probably like fourth grade, maybe. I don't know, around that.
Probably
like
young.
you're really young, and your only view of Catholicism and spiritual life is your parents, and it's on those retreats for me where I was like, oh, I can do this too, and I can have my own experiences. And not only can I have my own experiences, but my spiritual life is based on like these. Like I remember like prayer meetings, you had one or two during the retreat, and those were always like I was honestly excited for those because I had always heard like that's where stuff goes down. That's where you find it, whatever you're meant to do. Like you can receive the gifts of the Holy Spirit and all those different things. So I kind of looked forward to it as like, all right, let's see what I get tonight. It's like Pokemon cards or something. But yeah, so I don't know. I think for me, as I've gotten older, the foundation had been set so long ago that there's never been a doubt in my mind about believing in God. Like I've never questioned my belief in God. My
good for you. I can't say the same.
Motive. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's probably not the same for all my brothers, but for me at least. And I also think like
I'm only saying that to normalize it. It is very common for anyone to just question things.
No, for sure. And I do know like a lot of people personally who have. I don't know, for some reason it was always like that's just a given. Like I know that. And now I can do all these other things. But for my spiritual life, I think from going to Franciscan was when I really was like, okay, these guys are all adults and they have this together. And yeah, I had a good formation, but that doesn't matter if I can't apply it. And I definitely had a lot of conversations with David about that. But I do think at least that started me off well.
Yeah, I mean, my impression of Franciscan University, it's, by the way, here's a funny little aside. People who haven't gone there call it Steubenville, but the students from there always call it Franciscan. I don't know if
that is kind of weird. I guess I have noticed that too.
Yeah. But my impression of Franciscan is that there's a very emotional, charismatic dimension to the university spirituality. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
There definitely is. It's very focused on, but I think the pressure, which is a good thing for sure, but I think the pressure is more so from the students than anything else. Which starts good and I think quickly gets unhealthy. And I personally could name 5 people who left the school because of the judgment. So I think it is definitely important. With Franciscan, it's an amazing school, and I loved every second of going there, and it was awesome for my spiritual formation, but it also really, really, really pinpoints your own spiritual sort of state. Like if you're not in a good place spiritually, someone's going to call you out on it, and that hurts, but it's cool to be at a place where that's normalized.
I think that's a tricky place to be, especially for young adults. Colby, talk to me. In my experience, I've had very secular friends and I've had very Catholic friends, and it's difficult to share values with people who are not living a Catholic faith. We have a difference in worldview, but what I've often found is that people in the Catholic world, just in my experience, have a sort of critical attitude and a judgmental attitude about choices that are made. You said that you had 5 friends that you can think of that left the university because they felt judged and criticized.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts about that? Do you think that's a common issue among young Catholics?
I think I'm not going to, let me not make an over generalization on the school as a whole or young Catholics, but the people that I knew that went through that were not in a good place spiritually when they got there. So I think part of it is understanding that everybody's at a different place spiritually. With friends, at least, I think a more important and better way of doing it would not be this is how you get there. It's like, all right, where are you at right now? Like, these are the basic steps
Definitely.
that have helped me to where I am. Like, you don't need to be where I'm at right now. You don't have to go to adoration for 2 hours and come out as a new person. Just pray and go to mass and start with the simple things. Because I think in Catholicism, there's a lot of levels to how seriously people take it, right? Like, obviously, there's people who throw the term around, like Alex said, and there's people who devote their life to it, like our uncle. So I definitely think, it
not only that, it's a great point. Everything you're saying is a great point. Not only that, I think, I don't know that. I mean, this is kind of a tricky tightrope to walk here, but I think that there are paths to holiness that during certain periods in someone's life don't always consist of accessing the sacramental life, right?
Right.
Like you're talking about how, like, well, they're going to adoration, not going to adoration, but Pope Benedict talked about there are as many paths to God as there are people, and I like what you said about meeting people where they are, and I think, I asked you about young Catholics because I think it's common among young Catholics to, out of fear, to draw a line between us Catholics and those secular people. These choices that I'm making and the choices that they're making. When the reality is, like, dude, I'm a mess. Like, I've sinned like 15 times in the last like hour. Like, I want the reason why I want this show to be put out there is because I want to dissolve this idea that it's us Catholics and those sinners. The joke about this show is it's called the Catholic Sinner Show. Like, well, who do you think the sinner is? Like, me, dude. Like, I'm the sinner, and I want to be able to meet people where they are and accept that, like, God's, from my standpoint, from a Catholic perspective, God's got them. I don't need to judge them. God's got them and the path that they're on. Even if their decisions and their choices and their values are different than the way I'm living, God has them. If I believe he's God, then I got to trust him that he's got this. And in fact, what I've realized, I think, within myself is those times where I'm feeling critical or judgmental of other people's choices, like, I'm way harder on myself than I am on other people. It's really learning about how to, like, extend mercy to myself way before I can connect with other people. Does this, I see some head nods. Does this resonate with anyone here?
Yeah, and I think it's part of what you were talking about earlier with the judgment that you've seen in the church and with Catholics. The line that we have to walk is we're called to holiness, and that holiness is real. And it's a disservice to people to act like that's not real and that that's not like a unique thing that just living your life is going to offer you. Like, they are
such
not
a personal call.
Exactly. But when you are living that and you see people who may not have any desire to do so, especially it's hard in a place like Franciscan, because there's kind of a default premise that you think everyone who's there is like a practicing Catholic. And in the same way that Alex was talking about with Catholic high school, a lot of kids are made to go there. Like, they graduated and it's like, mom and dad are going to pay for one school. Like, if you want to go to Steubenville, it's covered. If you want to go everywhere else, like, good luck. So I think there is a difficulty at a school like that.
That's a tough place to be in for a kid, right? The amount of pressure, and then there's the risk too of, like, if there's that kind of focus and control from a parent to be a very explicit version of living a life of faith, that if you have a problem with your parents and there's a part of you that rejects your relationship with your parents, you're also going to reject faith because there's that association of your parents with faith.
Yeah. What I encountered there, so we talked about this earlier. I went to Arizona State. I went to Franciscan for their study abroad, but I didn't go there. But what I noticed there, that I think is cool, is they are aware of that. Like talking to our uncle who is at Steubenville and talking to other students and professors that we know.
Yeah.
Like they are perfectly aware that that's the reality. And what they try to do is provide opportunities for students to encounter the Lord themselves. And I think that's what matters, because what all of them kind of talked about with City of the Lord, if you don't have a personal encounter with God, all of this is kind of pointless. Like you're going to eventually...
Yeah, it becomes like duty.
Yeah. And duty's valid. Like duty is a step in authentic love. Like you're doing it because you know it's what you ought to do.
Yes.
But if that's all it is, like it's not as strong as true love. Like truly encountering God and being like, I know who I'm following and the faith that I have, and it's worth doing all of this.
Well, so David, you're engaged. Yeah. There will be moments in your near future where you're doing something out of duty. And it's not the emotional love that you're feeling for your spouse, but it is a good thing to aspire to. It's very akin to romantic love, where there's moments of real passion of wanting to do it for the good of your spouse and the person that you love. And then there's moments when it's just hard and you have to like assent to an ideal.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say though, there's a difference between duty and doing things you don't want to do out of love. Like you could have a duty having a job of like, yeah, it's my duty to complete my projects on time and to show up in a timely manner. And like, even when things are hard in my life, to still be presentable and doing good work. It has nothing to do with my love for it. It's because like, it's what I have to do and what I'm committed to. Whereas with what you're talking about, which I definitely like, that is the number one advice everyone has had who are married or who are further along in their relationships, even just further along in engagement than me, is loving someone means there are going to be times when you're doing things that are exhausting or that you don't want to do or don't feel good. And as you're saying, love is both an emotional, passionate, like encounter while also still being a decision that
Eros and agape, right?
Yeah. So I think that was kind of a tangent, but I would say it's just the difference. And I think what a lot of people, at least here that I've seen, so sorry, I feel like I jumped.
No, like, you're doing great.
Wrecked through what we were talking about. No. But I think with my experience with the faith, I went to ASU and really chose to live where I did. So I lived in St. Paul's Outreach, which is a Catholic community that is on college campuses to give students a good community to be a part of and to live the faith intentionally. I chose to do that because it was cheaper than the dorms. Like it had nothing to do with my faith. It was purely like, I didn't want to live at home, but I also didn't want to pay to live in a dorm with someone I didn't know.
You also didn't want to live with your brother and your friends, but whatever.
Yeah, that ended up being a great move. We don't need to talk about that one, but yeah, like it just made the most sense at the time. And throughout college, there were a lot of opportunities like what Eddie's talking about, where it's like, yeah, I could move out. And there was a lot of living in household that took me growing up, because it was like we had morning prayer 3 days a week. We had household dinner 2 times a week. We basically were the missionary arm of our Newman Center, so we had a ton of responsibility there.
Yeah.
And I was 18 and didn't even really want to do it to begin with. And there were lots of times where it's like, is this what I want? But I think what I encountered through my time in SBO is I had a lot of moments where it was my decision to say yes. To like say yes to the Lord or say yes to what being Catholic is.
I mean, it sounds
And
like the City of the Lord experience like prepared you for the St. Paul's outreach experience. It is that doing the difficult thing even when you don't feel like doing it.
Definitely. Yeah, and it was a little different then too, because the decision wasn't made by us. Like, it was our parents who were saying we were going. It's like, well, I live here, so I got to go. But it definitely did. Like, you get used to
not paying
understanding of the faith. Yeah. And I'm a minor. It's like, I gotta go where they're going. Yeah. But yeah, my maturity with the faith definitely had a lot to do with that, because there are aspects of it that are not based on how you feel that day. And we were given a lot of opportunities to experience that.
Yeah. Alex and Eddie, earlier on, we talked about how, Alex, you specifically, we're talking about how there are moments when you want to have fun, which is different than things being boring, right? There's this juxtaposition, to use your word, not mine. This juxtaposition between having fun and being bored. Now, as we're talking here, I couldn't help but think that every time you heard the word duty, there was an immature part of you that wanted to make a joke about duty. What is your reaction to this conversation? What are your thoughts on all of this? I mean, my original question is, where are you at in terms of what you're practicing and what your beliefs are? You guys are not part of the college, both of you, either one of you. You're not part of the collegiate community where there's even a question of practicing faith. But where are you at now?
I would say, like Colby said, he's never questioned his faith in God, or if he believes in God, I guess that simple fact. And I don't really, I definitely have questioned it, but I've definitely never come out of the other side, not believing. It's always been, I've questioned my faith a lot, for sure. But I've definitely always felt that I do believe in God. For City of the Lord, I guess as far as City of the Lord goes, I don't know. I kind of look at it two ways and kind of how it's impacted my faith. Firstly, I would say, in my life, when my faith has been difficult, I would say throughout my life, it's been always a choice. It's been faith. I haven't had really, I guess, a lot of those really personal encounters. And so when I've been struggling with my faith, I think at times it has been hard to have so many strong Catholics around me, in the way that it can be a little discouraging when, to have a brother like David, who his faith is seemingly so strong, and he's, I guess, so successful with his faith, you could view it. And that's a great thing to have around, in a way, but it's also hard to have around as much as I feel like we do, because when I am struggling, it's a lot easier to feel maybe worse than I would if I didn't have all these incredible examples of faith. But
what do you mean by worse? What do you mean by worse?
I think I'm way more critical of my faith because I have so many good examples of faithful men and women. It has made me feel like my journey, to some extent, has been a little bit harder because I am wanting so much out of it. And I've seen the fruits of people's faith and their dedication to God. And so when you're not seeing those fruits of your own dedication, it's really discouraging. But in that same breath, what I wanted.
What does that look like?
like when you are doing the hard stuff, when you are, let's say, going to confession, going to mass every Sunday, doing your prayer time, and you're not feeling that connection with God, that's really difficult. Yeah, that's really difficult. So
That
I
is
think
hard. It's really
that yeah, that has made it kind of difficult in a way, because I think I'm a lot more critical, and I know what it is that the faith provides, and so when I don't recognize that in my own life, it's hard. And I feel like we have a hyper awareness of that because we've seen it touch so many people's lives, and seen so many families that are constructed around God, and we've seen what that looks like and what that does, and that's great and beautiful. But the other thing that I wanted to say, like kind of on the same note, is being in City of the Lord, you see.
Can I pause you for a moment? I have a question.
Yeah.
Before we get into City of the Lord, I want to put a pin in that. But for you, if not in the sacramental life or through the experience of City of the Lord, you said that you have had doubts or questions about faith, but you have come out on the other side believing that God exists. Where do you experience God, if not in those kind of like direct, more overt Catholic experiences? Where do you personally experience God?
Yeah. Personally, for me, I would say my experience with God would more so come kind of from like I don't know if I would even maybe call it as much of an experience as like kind of logically looking at my own life and just me being here. And
no
I
emotion,
can just
no kind of like emotional experience of God sort of showing up and speaking to you personally. Does that never happen? Even if it's like through art or nature, anything?
Through like overdoses, like unconscious states, I've had like experiences like that where I feel like I actually like maybe had more of like a conversation or like that connection you're speaking of. But I would say
he was
more
there for
so
you in those dark
me.
moments.
Yeah, more so for me, I can look back on my life and recognize that there's just simply no way. There's no way he wasn't there in like a lot of moments, and I can look back and recognize that. But it's not something that I necessarily would have recognized when I was going through it. It just really like, if I can't break something down logically and kind of like think like that makes sense, then I struggle with it. But even when I kind of approach it from like that very like logical perspective, like it just makes sense to me. And so that I think every time I've questioned it, I've kind of just come out on the other side and been able to look at my life and think like, there has to be there are several times in my life where I know there's been like divine intervention, and that didn't come through
can I
like
ask you
a
a logical question?
conversation. Yeah.
I want to ask you a logical question. So by the logic that you expressed to me, there, looking back over the course of your life, you saw God's involvement. You saw that there's no way that he was not involved in those experiences. But when you were going through it, it was hard for you to know where he was and how he was leaving an imprint on your life at that time. Let's take all that and move it forward. Logically, and it would seem, if all of that is true, that he's involved in your life right now, but you can't see it.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Exactly. Yes. And that has maintained my faith to the point that I'm at today, is kind of what I'm saying. Is when I look back at my life, it is really clear that God's been there. So I know that he's always.
Do you have any sense of? Do you have any sense of how he's with you right now in what you're going through?
Yeah. Like I think I've always I guess to put it simply, like the way I've always felt God is definitely through like his creations and the beauty of like the world and art and all of that, and just like and just as an artist, just kind of like there needs to be a creator for this creation, and I don't know, it just is really pretty sound stuff. When I break it down, I realize I tend to way overcomplicate it, and really for me, I feel like the thing that I've always been able to go back to is like, I've struggled with my faith a lot, but I just feel like I know, like, deep down that I do believe, and that I just have a unique way of connecting. And the thing that I was going to say about City of the Lord was really important, is like in mass, you don't get to see like really how people practice their faith, like the individuality of it. It's just, you're a crowd or like a congregation, whatever.
Yeah, everybody's aligned in
City of the
Lord
liturgical
expression.
Yeah. In City of the Lord, you're seeing like, okay, this person is like, they have a really emotional like connection to God that is like, prophetic. Like, they're having conversations, they're hearing things,
It's out
there is that. Yeah. And then there's the complete opposite. There's the people who are showing up every single Sunday, and I've never even heard them speak. But clearly they're
deeper,
feeling
it's internal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just seeing the way that, there is just that wide like spectrum, that like how you connect to God and how you feel God, and then how you decide to worship, that can be different. And I think that was really valuable to see, just to know, like, there is that guy who's just loud as all hell and seems to always be just on fire with the Holy Spirit, but like, it's also okay to be me and just to just try to, yeah. So I think more than anything, that's been what's valuable.
That's cool. As you're talking, I think about the four different ways of experiencing God. God is truth, God is goodness, God is beauty, and God is all one. There's a great book by Father Benedict Rochelle who talks about this. And God, and we primarily have one, but we also have like maybe one or two. Some of us can experience God in multiple different ways, but God as beauty is a very profound experience for many, many people. And, it's interesting you talk about these two different sides of your personality. Going all the way back, I mean, there's this thread throughout this entire conversation of you as an artist versus you being realistic. And you're talking about like your faith being sort of practical and reasonable, but then you experience God in beauty. It's like these two different parts of yourself that are almost like vying for dominance, because like God as beauty is very difficult to be logical about or to systematize.
Yeah.
It really is an emotional experience of God.
Yeah, my two biggest like personalities, I guess, would be like, I'm a very like numbers. I'm an analytical person, but I'm an artist, which those are two things that don't generally like go together. Maybe like if they do, it's like in an architect. Like an architect, sometimes you'll see that, but
yeah.
It's a weird like combination of things, and I feel like figuring out like that's pulled me in so many directions, I feel like, as far as my faith. And the thing that I've been realizing lately is I just need to allow myself to like move forward a little bit more and not be on this like tug of war with myself so much, because I'm just like standing so still when I let those two sides of my brain like fight. I think I'm able to I think you should be able to see, God in the beauty of the world, but also like at the same time, it's okay to be able to like recognize, I guess, like sometimes you can look at God as a very logical and like
he's rational. He is the word.
Yeah.
And he's also beauty.
Yeah. So you can look at it from both sides, but so it's hard sometimes feeling the pull between the two.
I love what you said just there. In my line of work, we have this idea that we are a multiplicity and a unity, both. So I am Bryan, but I have different parts of myself that become more manifest or evident at different points in my life. Sometimes they become they grab the steering wheel. There are parts of me that really take control, and it's really a younger part of myself that's making decisions for me. And I actually don't want to let that part blend with my choices. And I want to sort of be in self and relate to that part, listen to that part of myself, but not let it run the show. And what I hear you talking about is these two different parts of you, which are probably younger, that are vying for control of Alex. And sometimes one part is winning and other times another part is winning. But what you said is like, actually, like, these parts don't need to fight. When I'm in self, I can listen to both of these younger parts of me, hear what they have to say, but move forward with all the parts. Yeah. All the parts. I don't have to choose one side of me or the other. I can experience God in different ways. I can experience life in different ways. I can be an artist and make money. I can create I can create t-shirts and like football. Yeah. God is reason and God is beautiful. I don't need to choose. It's all the stuff, all the things. So I think it's pretty cool. All right, Eddie. A lot of people talking here. So there's a lot of pressure on you to come up with a very sophisticated and intelligent response. And if you don't, we're going to criticize you and judge you. So
good.
Already are.
So like
what are your thoughts on some of this stuff? You practicing? Are you Catholic? Are you singing the Lord? Are you Buddhist? Are you what are you doing?
Saying that reminder, because I kind of forgot what that original prompt was. But still definitely practicing. I think honestly, I feel like, at least as far as where I'm at now with things and some of the struggles that I am having are, I think growing up and even going through school, and I feel like I was really, especially during the high school years, kind of making the faith my own and establishing more personal habits that weren't necessarily pushed on me by, parents or someone of that nature. But I feel like I had some good habits established. And then I feel like out of high school, at least the first couple of years with door to door and different living situations, a lot of traveling, it was a lot of craziness. And it was definitely, especially when I was traveling, and because I was very, very rare, I was traveling with anyone else who was Catholic. And because for the first couple of years, I didn't even have my own vehicle. It was tough to be out, most of the time working in Northern California with, again, it was hard to even get to Mass, and it was hard to convince myself that it was worth doing instead of, we only got one day off a week and it was Sunday. So there'd be certain days where it's like, all right, I either Uber 25 minutes away to Mass by myself,
or I get sleep for the first time this week.
Or I get sleep, or I go, spend the day at the beach with my friends, and
sure.
And against the one day of the week, something like that's an option because the summer door-to-door schedule is, that was the only day off. So there was a lot of times early on, especially my first 2 summers, where I really wasn't going to Mass weekly, and especially when I was out selling, mostly summer sales season, it was really hard to have that consistency. And I think I really, part of myself was hard on myself, where it's okay, this stuff is important. You have the time to do it. Why don't you do it? You're not doing good enough, like, where it's very critical. But I think luckily I was really able to figure out myself, where it's like, hey, you weren't perfect. There's a lot of weekends that you weren't there, but it wasn't due to any sort of lack of desire. And yes, you could have done better. And yes, hopefully in the similar situation now, I would.
But you're not going to beat yourself up. You have compassion towards yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like in a lot of cases, that's kind of what ends up pushing people away from the church is, they think of God as a very judgmental person.
He's sitting on a cloud with a thunderbolt, and he's just like whipping it down on you for every single venial sin you commit.
No, exactly. And I think one perspective that's helped me a lot is like, yes, there's a way that we're called to live, and there's certain things that align with that call, and there's certain things that don't. But I think, and luckily this has been emphasized a lot in my life, is like, more than anything, like, God is love, and God loves you, and he cares about you, and your relationship with him is the most important. It's like, And it's like, again, like, yes, there's things you should do and you shouldn't do, but it's like the love should be primary and everything else should be secondary. So again, it
I
wasn't
love this.
obviously easy, but over time it's like, okay, like I know I should have, could have done better. I know there's still definitely things in my life that I can do better, but it's like, I think the most dangerous thing is like if I let that turn into resentment, or it's like I'm so sick of living in these confines and feeling like I'm not enough, then like screw it, it's like I'm just taking myself out of the system and these standards won't be here anymore. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people who do that find it's like, well, shoot, those standards are still there. They're just not quite coming from the religion that I thought. It's like a lot of that
Well, the
stuff doesn't
standards are
leave
there.
just because you leave the
The
faith.
standards are there not so that we feel crummy about ourselves because we don't meet those standards, but those standards are there. Morality exists because those acting in a way that is moral is good for us. It is
Right.
not good for us to, like, when I tell my daughter, like, don't touch the hot stove, it's not because I don't want her to have fun.
Right.
Like, I just don't want her to burn her hand, obviously. And I think that's what a lot of the moral teaching of the church is. I mean, all of the moral teaching of the church is really about. And of course, we're going to fall short, like you're saying, but to be merciful towards yourself and to be kind towards yourself is huge.
Yeah, and I think even what you just touched on was big for me, where when I started thinking a lot of, what the church says you should do, what the church says you shouldn't do, it even taking the church out of the picture, it's like because I feel like I lost myself a lot of like what if questions. Like this is what I believe, like what if things were different, or what if I wasn't understanding correctly? And again, even removing faith from the picture, when I think about these different things that maybe the church said are right or it's wrong, it's like, there's, I mean, everything that I can think of, at least off the top of my head, it's like there's always a logical explanation where it's like you said, it's like, yes, you should not, I don't know, what's a good example? Like disrespect your parents, like because it's in
Lie.
the Bible
How
and you're
about
supposed to
lie?
respect right,
Sure.
lie. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, yes, you shouldn't lie because, the church tells you not to lie and you're told that's a sin and this and that. But it's like, even if you're not religious, it's like, you shouldn't treat people that way and you should be, an honest and, person with integrity. And again, without even considering God as part of the picture, it's like there are objective, downfalls that come with lying, and especially when it's something that you do consistently. So it's like, it's not, I
Yeah.
find myself being able to think about the same issues even allowing myself to temporarily think of them from like a non-Catholic perspective.
Yeah.
I found the resolution, the answer, my understanding never really changed. And I think that helped make me a lot more comfortable with the faith. It's like, okay, I've thought all of this through, or no, again, I shouldn't say all, but I've thought a lot of it through logically, and my conclusions don't change based on the perspective I think of it from. So
I love this. I love this. I love what all of you have said. It's um I truly have invested myself in that line that there are as many paths to God as there are people, and no one path is better than another. God meets us where we are, and he takes into his infinite wisdom all the circumstances of our lives which brought us to where we are. That even we perhaps don't even understand those things about ourselves, our own experiences, our own wounds, our own hurts, our own graces, our own gifts. It's very complicated and mysterious how it all works together into each person's particular path. But I know that he loves us individually, and I know that he meets us where we are, and he just asks us to take the next step. That's it. Just the next step. We don't have to do these amazing things beyond what is the next step for us. And he calls us to him, and how that's expressed, whether that's through City of the Lord or through charismatic movements or being Franciscan or being, whatever, you name it, Carmelite, or even for a time in people's life, even outside of the church. even outside of the Catholic Church. I know that he has the world in his hands, not to sound like a song, but I know that he cares about each one of us. And I just really appreciate you guys being open and honest with that. But there's so much more for us to talk about. I'd love to have you guys back on again. I literally got through 2 questions. It's been almost 3 hours, and I got through 2 questions. That may be a function of the fact that there are 5 of us talking, or it may be the fact that each one of you is deeply insightful and willing and, amazing young men. And I'm going to pat myself on the back and say that I saw it when you were all just children. and I'm so proud of the young men that you've become, and you're a great witness. At some point, I want to talk about how what it's like to be a young man attempting to live some version of a Catholic faith in a world that's generally antithetical to being Catholic. And I don't know, it's probably a different answer for each one of you. I don't know if you live in very insular worlds where you're not exposed to the world, or there are different versions of that, more or less. But my hope for the audience of this show is that people of all different faiths and creeds and beliefs and political persuasions watch this show. And I have guests of differing beliefs. And the whole point is that people come together and can share whatever they're going through. So I'm interested in your personal encounter with a secular experience and what that's like, and whether you have non-Catholic friends, or, what kind of music do you listen to, and what kind of films do you watch, and, all these things that are not explicitly Catholic, or whether or not you can find explicit Catholicism in them, or, maybe some things you're trying to work out for yourselves. So you guys are the cat's meow.
Thanks, Bryan.
Thanks, sir.
It's been fun. I'd definitely be down to do another conversation at some point. It's a lot of fun.